Chapter 703. Dmo Xian's reaction was swift, and before her fist could land, he grabbed her slender wrist. He put down the brush, turned his head and raised his eyes. Between his deep brows, there was a trace of gentleness. That pair of gleaming peach blossom eyes were like a pool of spring water. Just this gaze was enough to tug at her heartstrings, making her unable to control herself. Yiqing Luo struggled against his hand and said in a bad mood, "Don't think that just because you put on such a handsome face to seduce me, I will take the bait." Dmo Xian's red lips curled upwards as his fingers abruptly withdrew his strength. Yiqing Luo fell right into his arms. Her cheek had just bumped into his hard and hot chest when her eyes were covered by a handsome face. He kissed her lips. Extremely ferocious and overbearing. The fanatical strength made Yiqing Luo unable to withstand it. Their breaths intertwined together, inseparable. Yiqing Luo's petite body trembled slightly as she wanted to struggle but was unable to stop Dmo Xian's passion. She could only allow Dmo Xian's breath to engulf her inch by inch. That kiss was filled with sentiments. Until both of them were out of breath, Yiqing Luo was finally let go. She had no strength left as she laid in Dmo Xian's arms, panting heavily. "What I did to you, is this, do you want to relive it again?" She heard his hurried breathing and could obviously feel his body turning stiff. Yiqing Luo's cheeks flushed red as she snorted coldly. But this cold snort was not imposing at all. It was more like a soft whimper. Dmo Xian's eyes drooped as he gazed at the lady in his arms. His ears were so red that water was about to drip out, and the smile and satisfaction in his eyes grew thicker. Usually she looked domineering and powerful, decisive, swift and vicious, the queen. But in front of him, she had a young lady's bashful look. To any man, this was an extremely satisfying thing. Yiqing Luo was shy while Dmo Xian burst out laughing. "This is devil class, don't you dare mess around." Her embarrassment turned into anger. Dmo Xian laughed even more happily as his fingers caressed her swollen pink lips. "What you mean is, if I'm not in devil class, I can mess around? You." Yiqing Luo's cheeks turned even redder. The calluses on the man's fingertips caressed her lips inch by inch, giving her a feeling of being electrocuted. Dmo Xian didn't seem to be bothered by her anger out of humiliation. Instead, he moved closer to her ear and laughed lowly. "Lil Luo, looking at my face, does it feel the thrill of having an affair?" With a swoosh, Yiqing Luo's face was flushed so red that it couldn't get any redder. Damn it! She was always teased by an ancient person until her face turned red. She was rendered speechless before she even started her car. What a shame! Yiqing Luo swore that including her previous life, she had never been so embarrassed. It was all Dmo Xian's fault. Yiqing Luo slapped away the man's arm which was circling around her body and struggled free from his restraints as she stomped her feet and ran out of the class committee room. Even the purpose of coming here had been thrown to the back of his mind. She didn't realize that the moment the class committee room's door was closed, Ji Yunshu's expression changed. The man who was wearing a teasing smile slowly retracted the emotions in his eyes. His expression congealed as his dark eyes stared at the white robe on the soft couch for a long time before he slowly stood up. It didn't take long for him to take out a robe that was similar to this one from within the Netherworld Dragon Ring, and put it on. In front of Yiqing Luo, he had to be extremely careful. Otherwise, based on Lil Luo's intelligence, when she regained consciousness, she would definitely suspect the reason why he was unconscious in the class committee room. He couldn't let Lil Luo take the risk. And he couldn't let Lil Luo have any bit of chance to get hurt. Chapter 704. Yiqing Luo ran out of the class committee room and directly rushed forward. She touched her burning cheeks as her heart was unable to calm down. More than that, there was a sliver of bewilderment. Dmo Xian was like a feather, tickling her heartstrings non-stop. In front of Dmo Xian, she increasingly felt like a little lady. This kind of her, even she herself felt extremely unfamiliar. So unfamiliar that her heart was flustered. She had always been unrestrained and unrestrained. Once as the mistress of the hidden family, she often went on missions for the family, and it wasn't that she had never met any men who were interested in her, or men who were interested in her. But she had never stopped her footsteps for anyone. Nor would she disguise or change for anyone. But in front of Dmo Xian, she had unknowingly become his captive. Was this the feeling of loving someone? The thoughts in her mind kept on churning. Behind her was the sound of a few students conversing. Yiqing Luo was in a daze as she turned her head around and saw a few students walking towards her direction in groups. On seeing Yiqing Luo, the few of them stopped their topic. "Madam Qing Luo. Where are you going?" The few students were stunned as they burst out laughing. "Madam Qing Luo, you must be joking. It's already 7 p.m., we're going to the training grounds to train." 7 p.m.? Which was around 7 or 8 in the evening. This time was coincidentally Dmo Xian's training time. Yiqing Luo slapped her forehead fiercely. After being disturbed by Dmo Xian, she almost forgot the reason why she was looking for him. She and the few students arrived at the training grounds, and there were already several tens of students standing there. Not long later, the students were all gathered and lined up properly. After a while, Dmo Xian carried a stack of questionnaires over. When Yiqing Luo saw him, that blush which she had suppressed with great difficulty, started to burn again. She shook her head as she took a few steps forward and turned her head around to look at the students who lined up properly. "Before today's training, I want to see your real ability." The students were at a loss as they didn't understand Yiqing Luo's meaning. "Take off the gravity belts on your arms and legs. Take off all the weight-bearing accessories as well." The students didn't understand why, but towards Yiqing Luo's orders, they had always followed it. When all the weights on their bodies had been removed, their faces were filled with disbelief. Each and every one of them could clearly feel that their bodies had become lighter, as if they could reach a height of 3 feet with a light leap. Furthermore, his speed had also increased by tens or even hundreds of times. What was going on? The students excitedly began to exercise their bodies one by one, and a few students even began to fight on a small scale. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as she carefully swept past these students. He was quite satisfied. Ever since she took over the training of these students, they had to wear gravity belts even when they showered. Each of them was carrying a weight of at least 200 jin, and the highest had already reached 450 jin. It was that delicate and pretty youth, Baiming Liancheng. Even Long Yunzhan and the others only carried 150 kilograms of weight. They had to wear these gravity belts and undergo cruel and torturous training every day. They also had to be chased by a leopard and a 9-tailed fox. Over time, these gravity belts on the ground, they were no different from ordinary people. Now that they removed these 200 to 300 kilograms of weight, their bodies naturally felt light, as though they were about to fly into the sky. Not only their speed and body's lightness, their ability and reaction speed would also increase by a huge margin. Chapter 705. That's right, Yiqing Luo had copied Instructor Chu and Instructor Ho's method. This was indeed the fastest way to understand one's own team members' strengths. After exchanging blows, one would be able to swiftly know where their weaknesses and strengths were. When the students heard that, they immediately cried out in shock. What the F***K? Had they heard wrongly? They were going against Master Supreme Mo? Wasn't this the same as touching the Tai Sui's head? Plucking the fur from the tiger's mouth? The students' eyes were filled with shock as they looked at Yiqing Luo in fear. They saw Yiqing Luo smiling as she looked at them seriously and nodded. They didn't hear wrongly. Yiqing Luo really wanted them to battle against Master Supreme Mo. The students were so scared that their faces turned pale, as they looked at Dmo Xian, who was holding a warm smile with trepidation. Dmo Xian nodded his head cooperatively. Finished. Would they be able to return alive today? The students had a hopeless expression as they ran towards Long Yunzhan's direction and pleaded, "Class monitor. Class monitor. It's better for you to train us. This is simply asking for our little lives." Long Yunzhan was expressionless. "I will also take part in the battle." The implication was that none of the students in Devil class would be spared. The students were wailing incessantly. Xiao Jin revealed a rare serious expression as he threw the gold coin dart in his hand into the sky and caught it. Class monitor might not lose to Master Supreme Mo even if he takes action. Moreover, if you carry the mentality that you will definitely lose against Master Supreme Mo, then the battle which Qing Luo arranged will lose its original meaning. The students who were wailing in pain suddenly stopped. Do you know how many people in the world want to cross hands with Master Supreme Mo? Qing Luo gave a faint laugh as her cold eyes flashed with a biting cold glint. Master Supreme Mo is one of the 10 great elders in the main courtyard. Not only is he the youngest elder in the main courtyard, he is also one of the best among the elders. She repeated the information of Dmo Xian, who was disguised as Master Supreme Mo, word by word. In the hearts of Devil class's students, Qing Luo had long become their center. Now that they heard Qing Luo's cold tone, all of them felt their hearts thumping as they knew that she was angry. Now that Qing Luo was speaking, no one dared to make a sound. Even his breathing was very careful. It is your honor to be able to fight with Senior Master Mo. To be able to receive guidance from Senior Master Mo, it can be said that it is a blessing that you have cultivated in your past lives. The students lowered their heads in shame. Qing Luo had no intention to blame them. After all, these youths were still young. He didn't think too much about it. Just like when Instructor Chu and Instructor He asked the freshmen to challenge them, those freshmen were also in fear, for fear of offending the instructors. But they had never thought about it. As the elders, they were responsible for guiding the students. The person who proposed this condition would definitely be of help to them. Even if there was no help. If he could fight against such a powerful person, he would also be able to discover his own shortcomings. What was there to be afraid of? She just had a kind of resentment towards iron for not becoming steel. She hoped that these students could become useful people with her help. These students were her team, her companions. Qing Luo didn't have the leisure to bother about those freshman training grounds thoughts. Facing her team, her partners, Qing Luo was willing to tell all the principles that she knew to these partners. Chapter 706. Qing Luo's voice was sonorous and forceful. Every word and sentence was like a stone falling into their hearts, causing ripples to ripple in their hearts. One after another young faces, at this instance, turned grave. Those who had not matured yet, at this instance, straightened their backs. Their eyes sparkled with an unwavering conviction. From the moment you stood on the training ground, everything that you have done is to fight for yourself. Next is to fight for your brothers, to fight for the class. If you don't even have the courage to fight for yourself, to not get back that dignity which you have lost, then you don't have the right to stand on the training ground. Even if you force yourself to stand here, you will not be able to become the strong, and will forever be the weaklings on the training ground. The youngsters' mouths exploded with a low roar. We are not weaklings. I want to be the strong. Very good. Those who want to be the strong, do you know what to do next? Qing Luo nodded her head satisfactorily, her cold voice was extremely dignified. Simple words could easily shake one's heart. These youngsters who had been inspired, their eyes were filled with the luster of hope. They clenched their fists tightly, as one by one, they lined up into a line, as they cupped their fists towards Dmo Xian's direction. Master Supreme Mo, sorry for offending you. Master Supreme Mo smiled, as he took a step back, leaving some space. Come on. The leading student excitedly rushed up. At this moment, Yiqing Luo's pearl-like voice was heard from outside the students. During this period of time, you can use all your skills, using any methods, even dirty tricks. As long as you are able to fight to a draw with Master Supreme Mo, then this training will be considered as the end. The leading student's footsteps halted, as he turned his head, which means, "We can gang fight?" Yiqing Luo's smile was like a flower, as she nodded, "That's right." Her words had just ended. Those 60 students, as though flocked, as they charged towards Dmo Xian's direction. Xiao Jin was convulsing with laughter by the side. Qing Luo's move is simply too vicious. No matter how strong Master Supreme Mo is, it will be hard for him to fight against 60 students in a continuous battle. Yan Xiaoyi heaved a sigh of relief. Luckily this time, the ones who made the students gang up on him is not us. The rest of them nodded in agreement. Ever since they had Supreme Mo and Old Man Guiyu, they didn't have to worry much. All they had to do was train with the students every day. Even the dangerous task of being surrounded and attacked by the cannons was taken over by Supreme Mo. The students' excitement gradually turned into frustration after they fell to the ground one by one. More than 60 people ganged up on him. In the end, before they could even touch the corner of Supreme Teacher Mo's clothes, they were thrown to the ground. Even if they fell onto the ground, without Yiqing Luo's shout to stop, they had to bear with the pain and stand up, continuing to charge towards where Supreme Mo was. These students didn't know how many times they had stood up, stumbled, and repeated these actions over and over again. It was until they were covered with cuts and bruises, unable to stand up any longer when Yiqing Luo finally shouted for them to stop. She looked at the sweaty students lying on the ground, and her lips curled into a smile of admiration. "Very good, all of you are great." Indeed, it was great. No matter how bitter and tired they were, even if they fell to the ground and could not get up, no one complained about being tired or bitter. These students went into a slight daze. To be able to get a compliment from Yiqing Luo, even if they were already exhausted, they couldn't help but laugh out loud. Sounds of laughter from the young men and young ladies drifted across the entire training ground. Chapter 707. Yiqing Luo walked to Dmo Xian's side and handed over the cup and handkerchief. "Thanks for your hard work, Master Mo." Dmo Xian received the cup and glanced at the handkerchief as his lips curled into a teasing smile as he leaned close to her ear and lowered his voice. "I've been used by you for so long. Look at the sweat on my head. Aren't you going to wipe it off personally?" In front of the students, he dared to take liberties with her so openly. Didn't he want to hide his identity? She had already suffered several losses from Dmo Xian's mouth. Still wanted to continue taking liberties with her? She wanted to see who was the one taking liberties with who. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath as her lips curled into a charming smile as she clenched the handkerchief tightly and pressed it on his forehead. "Thank you Master Mo for your cooperation. As a member of the class committee, I represent the entire class to thank you." "Thank Mo. Zun. Fu. Z." The last sentence was almost spat out one word at a time. That handkerchief which was pressed on Dmo Xian's forehead also secretly increased her strength. The strength of her fingertips was definitely not small. Dmo Xian's face, which could almost be passed off as genuine, had traces of red. However, Dmo Xian, that fellow, still smiled without any change in expression. "Thank you for the late student Yiqing Luo's concern. I will remember your gratitude." Yiqing Luo's cheeks suddenly turned red. Her fingers were almost trembling. The so-called gratitude, Yiqing Luo naturally understood what it meant. This was also a joke that Dmo Xian often played recently. He always used gratitude and rewards as a request, asking for a kiss from Yiqing Luo. This was her gratitude towards Dmo Xian. If Yiqing Luo didn't agree, she would eventually be subdued into Dmo Xian's arms, forced and half-heartedly handed over her gratitude gift. Today, Dmo Xian was besieged by 60 students. which gave Dmo Xian an excuse to ask for a gratitude gift. Just as the two of them were exchanging glances, suddenly a figure appeared behind Dmo Xian. Master Mo, don't forget, there are still members of the class committee who have not participated in the challenge. The icy cold voice had no fluctuation of emotions. Long Yunzhan stood there. His azure blue eyes were cold and heavy. His brows creased slightly as he stared coldly at Dmo Xian. Supreme Master Mo, allow me to challenge you. Jin Z. Class monitor, is he crazy? Yan Xiaoyi was stunned. Weren't they not planning to go on stage? What was Long Yunzhan doing? He actually took the initiative to challenge Teacher Supreme Mo. No matter how strong the class monitor was, these 60 students who were working together to challenge Dmo Xian were not able to hurt him in the slightest. Could Long Yunzhan defeat Supreme Mo? Qiao Jin's brows furrowed, his gaze staring at Long Yunzhan had an additional trace of worry. As expected, with regards to Yiqing Luo's matters, Long Yunzhan was unable to maintain his usual calmness. Let him fight. After thinking for a while, Qiao Jin sighed. When it came to matters of the heart, it was useless no matter what outsiders said. Long Yunzhan was very clear that Yiqing Luo would only mention his brother. However, he just couldn't get out of this place. Forget it, I'll just let him fight with Di Zun. Perhaps, Long Yunzhan would give up. If he loses, will he? He won't. Not knowing when, Yiqing Luo had already handed over the battlefield to those two men, as she came to the side of Qiao Jin and the others. Chapter 708. But Class Monitor is the undefeatable legend in the students' hearts. Tong Ziqing pursed her red lips as her eyes were filled with worry. Yiqing Luo placed her hand on Tong Ziqing's shoulder as she gave a teasing smile. That's the undefeatable legend in your heart, right? You. Tong Ziqing's cold and elegant face instantly flushed a shade of red. She stared at Yiqing Luo resentfully as she struggled to break free from Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's charming eyes flickered as she gave a teasing smile. Could it be that Class Monitor has lost, so he's not the undefeatable legend in your heart? Of course he is. Without any hesitation, Tong Ziqing hurriedly replied as she blurted it out. Realizing that she had been tricked by Yiqing Luo, Tong Ziqing's cheeks turned even redder. Especially noticing that the others' gazes were all concentrated on her, Tong Ziqing instantly flew into a rage out of humiliation. What are you all looking at? Aren't you all worried for the Class Monitor? Qiao Jin gave a devilish smile as he decisively shook his head, not worried. Yan Xiaoyi also shook her head, not worried. Mo Yuying's eyes widened as her tender red lips slowly spat out a word, no. You all did it on purpose. Tong Ziqing's face was extremely red. She had always been walking on the noble and aloof route, and after being teased by Yiqing Luo today, her noble and aloof image was completely destroyed. Yiqing Luo spread out her hands as she innocently blinked her eyes. Yes, 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 I intentionally let Class Monitor become the undefeatable legend in your heart. I intentionally made you worry for Class Monitor. When she said that, Qiao Jin and Yan Xiaoyi couldn't help but burst out into laughter. Even Mo Yeying's stiff, puppet-like lips pulled up into an extremely shallow arc. Yi Qing Luo. Tong Ziqing completely went berserk as she gritted her teeth as she bellowed out Yiqing Luo's name word by word. Yiqing Luo smiled as she nodded, indicating that she was right here, so Tong Ziqing didn't need to bellow so loudly. Following that, her gaze returned back to those two men who were still looking at each other, finally stopping on Dmo Xian as her gaze turned slightly gentle. Actually, there's no need to worry at all. One is the belief of the devil class students and the other is the strongest and youngest supreme teacher Mo from the headquarters. No matter who wins or loses, their strength has long been engraved in our hearts, isn't it? Tong Ziqing calmed down. Her beautiful eyes stared at Long Yunzhan. She stared at his extraordinarily handsome, yet ice-cold face. Her red lips curled up slightly as she lightly nodded. Whether they won or lost, it would not affect their position in his heart. Devil Class's class monitor, are you sure you want to battle alone? Dmo Xian's smile was warm, but it was filled with a sense of evil. Long Yunzhan's expression was cold. One person is enough. Dmo Xian squinted his long and narrow peach blossom eyes, and that curved arc was rippling with light. He was laughing, as if he was laughing at Long Yunzhan for overestimating himself. However, upon closer inspection, it seemed to be an ordinary smile. A glint flashed past Long Yunzhan's icy cold eyes as he suppressed his anger. Cut the crap, let's do it. Saying that, Long Yunzhan's figure moved as his hands and feet speedily attacked towards Dmo Xian's direction. His attack was swift and fierce. He totally didn't show any mercy or had the intention to probe. The first move was a fatal killer move. This was also Long Yunzhan's habit. To subdue the enemy, it required speed and power. The more time was dragged, the more opportunities the opponent would have. A loud bang was heard as Long Yunzhan's first attack directly crashed onto the ground. Chapter 709. The surrounding students started to cry out in shock. They wanted to open their mouths to stop Long Yunzhan, but when they saw that frosty face, no one dared to say a word. Looking at the ground which was filled with gravel and the ground which was smashed into pieces, the students' hearts twitched. Class monitor, wasn't this battle a little too serious? This was our training ground. Such a vicious battle, so vicious that the ground was smashed. How were they going to train in future? Long Yunzhan's vicious attack made Dmo Xian's brows raised slightly. Class monitor seems to have some deep enmity with me. Didn't Qing Luo say to use all your skills? Long Yunzhan replied icily. His first move didn't succeed and Long Yunzhan's palms moved as profound qi burst out from his body and his 5 fingers turned into eagle claws, striking towards Dmo Xian's neck once again. Class monitor seems to have comprehended student Yi Qing Luo's words. Dmo Xian's long and narrow peach blossom eyes outlined a curved arc, looking even more devilish and arrogant. He flicked out his fingers and his fingertips easily locked onto Long Yunzhan's fingers. Following that, his fingertips exerted a little force as he locked onto Long Yunzhan's arm and with a gentle flip, he flipped Long Yunzhan over, pressing down on his arm. Your class monitor has set an extremely good example for all of you. When you're battling, no matter who the opponent says, don't treat it as a competition, but bring out your most vicious moves. You can treat your opponent as the person who killed your father, or as the person you hate the most. You can even treat him as the person you hate the most. The students were all astonished. Apparently, Long Yunzhan wasn't Master Supreme Mo's opponent. Master Supreme Mo didn't even need to use his full strength and could easily subdue Long Yunzhan. And he could even joyfully and easily use this opportunity to give them some guidance. The students didn't think that their class monitor's ability had regressed. On the contrary, they believed in their class monitor's ability. This could only prove one thing. Master Supreme Mo's ability was extremely powerful. No wonder he was able to become one of the 10 great elders in the main courtyard, and he was one of the best among the elders. No wonder Madame Qing Luo said that to be able to battle with such a powerful person was their good fortune from their past lives, it was simply their honor. Just as they were speaking, the sleeves of Long Yunzhan, who was originally held in Dmo Xian's hands, fluttered as rays of light flashed. Long Yunzhan's wrist flipped lightly, a dagger unknowingly appeared in his hand. Long Yunzhan's reaction was extremely fast. After struggling free from Dmo Xian, she flipped over and stabbed the dagger in her hand directly towards Dmo Xian's chest. Seeing that this dagger was about to touch Dmo Xian. However, the white figure quickly retreated and disappeared from everyone's sight in the blink of an eye. The students' eyes widened in disbelief as they looked around for Dmo Xian's figure, only to see Dmo Xian appearing behind Long Yunzhan. His jade-like white robe fluttered in the strong wind. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and his handsome and devilish face was like that of a god. Long Yunzhan swiftly rolled forward on the ground, avoiding Dmo Xian's attack range, and immediately wielding his dagger, he attacked Dmo Xian once again. His attacks did not stop. Moreover, it was getting sharper and faster. Not knowing if it was because Long Yunzhan's fighting spirit had been aroused, causing his attacks to turn ferocious, or if Dmo Xian was intentionally going easy on him. The two of them fought for exactly 1 hour, but there wasn't any winner or loser. The rhythm was controlled extremely well as usual. Both of them, no one gained the upper hand. This battle made everyone recall some time ago, Yiqing Luo's battle with the two instructors. Chapter 710. Yiqing Luo shook her head helplessly. That would depend on their mood. Generally speaking, a battle between men would not end until one side was dead. Especially since these two obviously had no intention of ending. Yiqing Luo was absolutely assured of Dmo Xian's ability. The Overlord's reputation wasn't just for show. As for Long Yunzhan, to be able to become Devil Class's class monitor and train these originally waste students to such a stage. Naturally he had the absolute ability. Looking at the way these two were fighting, it was as though the other party was her father's murderer, fierce and sharp. Unless she stopped herself, otherwise even if she went in to stop them, she might be sent flying. But what made Yiqing Luo curious was Long Yunzhan's ability. Actually, ever since she entered Devil Class, Yiqing Luo had never seen Long Yunzhan's ability. She had challenged Long Yunzhan before, but Long Yunzhan had rejected her. Even in the Magic Beast Forest, against that 7th level high-leveled Mirage Beast Child Een, Long Yunzhan didn't use his full strength. Today she saw Long Yunzhan's skills and the profound grade which she couldn't see through. It showed that Long Yunzhan's ability had already exceeded her imagination. The training ground had already been shattered to the point where no one could stand. The two of them were still exchanging blows. The other students were totally unable to tell the trajectory of their battle. They could only see the two of them moving like lightning, dodging left and right, like two graceful birds, leaving behind a trail of remnant shadows. Who do you think is more powerful? Yan Xiaoyi naturally could see their actions and her slender brows creased slightly, her eyes filled with worry. In fact, everyone was well aware of this answer. What Yan Xiaoyi really wanted to ask was, when would Supreme Master Mo stop? But asking this would probably hurt Long Yunzhan's pride. If this battle carried on for such a long time, even if this Devil Class courtyard had already been sealed by Master Mo using an array. But there was no guarantee that in such an intense battle, their profound qi would not overflow the barrier. Once the Academy's equipment detected this trace of profound qi, Devil Class's secret would not be able to be kept. Class Monitor is not Master Mo's opponent. Yiqing Luo replied straightforwardly as she narrowed her eyes and turned towards the students behind her. What do you all think? The students had not expected Yiqing Luo to throw this question to them. How were they supposed to answer this? If he replied that Long Yunzhan was formidable, wouldn't he be offending Supreme Teacher Mo? Furthermore, Supreme Master Mo was so powerful. Even if they told him, they would feel guilty. If they replied that Teacher Mo was powerful, wouldn't that go against the beliefs in their hearts? The class monitor would also have a knot in his heart. Just as the students were feeling extremely conflicted, they heard Yiqing Luo continuing to ask, "Do you think they're powerful?" The students' eyes lit up. This question was easy to answer. Amazing. Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled up as she crossed her arms in front of her chest, looking at these students behind her. Then do you know that there are many people who are more powerful than them in the world? The student's bright eyes immediately dimmed. He didn't quite understand the meaning behind Yiqing Luo's words. I only hope that you know, there's always someone better than you out there. The so-called amazing in your eyes, is really amazing, but in actual fact, there are many more people who are more powerful than what you see. Initially, Yiqing Luo had not thought of making use of this opportunity to tell everyone about the logic of basically everyone would make mistakes. Chapter 7:11. If it was her, would she be able to receive one move from Dmo Xian? Or, could she receive one move from Long Yunzhan? The answer was, she wasn't confident. These two people's abilities, no matter if it was Dmo Xian or Long Yunzhan, she wasn't their match. Just like what she said. There was always someone better than her in this world. There was still a lot of room for her to improve. This was how she felt right now. Hence, she passed on her feelings to the students. Self-righteousness was a common problem that all humans basically had. Especially these young men and young ladies. After being oppressed, receiving guidance and successfully surpassing those who had bullied them, they would probably be conceited, complacent. Always felt that the current her was extremely powerful. Always felt that depending on herself, she might be able to fight her way out. Always felt that there were only a few people who were more powerful than herself in this world. Always felt that no one was perfect. These students in the devil class also had this common problem. Otherwise they wouldn't have formed a small team back then, and wouldn't have bullied Ni Rua Pan, who was the most trash in the class. Even now, these students still had this kind of illness. Her words ended here. Whether they could be enlightened or not, would depend on whether these students remembered what she said in their hearts. Still want to fight? Dmo Xian also heard what Yiqing Luo said to the students. He squinted his devilish eyes, as his lips curled into a slight arc. It wasn't ridicule, nor was it banter, but a very natural smile. But this smile, in Long Yunzhan's eyes, was like a needle prick. His expressionless face sunk slightly, as his pair of frosty eyes seemed to have frozen into ice. Even if I can't beat you now, sooner or later, I will defeat you personally. Long Yunzhan clenched his fist tightly, as he swung it towards Dmo Xian's face. He was very clear that he wasn't Dmo Xian's match. But on seeing Dmo Xian smile, he wasn't willing to give up just like that. Even though he knew that Dmo Xian had intentionally held back, and didn't use his full strength to fight with him. Especially when Yiqing Luo mentioned that she wasn't Dmo Xian's match, that string in his heart broke. This punch carried his unwillingness, as well as a faint jealousy that even he himself wasn't sure about. However, Dmo Xian blocked his attack once again. Dmo Xian clenched his fists tightly as his body suddenly leaned forward. The two of them were getting closer and closer. He heard Dmo Xian chuckling beside his ear, Long Yunzhan, no matter how long it takes, you will never be my match. Strength is one, and so is little Luo, Long Yunzhan's body suddenly stiffened. His usually emotionless eyes were suddenly filled with panic. He took a few steps back guiltily and did not even have the courage to look at Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian knew. She knew the deepest secret in his heart. Knew of his feelings for Yiqing Luo. No wonder Dmo Xian had been intentionally letting him off, intentionally tangling with him for such a long time. Dmo Xian did this on purpose. He intentionally wanted to use this matter to declare his ownership of Yiqing Luo. Long Yunzhan's heart skipped a beat. He turned around and disappeared from the training ground in the blink of an eye. After a moment of deathly silence, the surroundings fell into a deathly silence. Tong Ziqing's eyes were filled with worry, as she wanted to chase up to him, but she didn't know where Long Yunzhan had disappeared to. Looking at the composed Yiqing Luo, she pursed her red lips as she asked apprehensively, "Class monitor, he?" Chapter 7:12. How could we lose our face? Tong Ziqing bit her lower lip as she anxiously shouted, "We are all clear of Master Mo's ability." 60 overbrothers besieged him and yet they weren't even able to touch Master Mo's sleeves. Sir Class Monitor had fought with Master Mo for more than 1 hour, which is enough to prove his ability. She purposely said these words for the other students to hear. All along, Long Yunzhan was the class students' belief. He was the deity who saved them from the abyss of suffering. Tong Ziqing didn't wish for any students to have a change of view towards Long Yunzhan because of this failure. Right. That's right. We are clearer than anyone else about Sir Class Monitor's ability. Sir Class Monitor had taught us for so many years and none of us are his opponent. How could we possibly not believe in his ability? Sir Qing Luo said before, there's always someone better than you out there. There are many people who are more powerful than Sir Class Monitor and there are also people who are more powerful than Master Mo. Not everyone is an undefeatable legend forever. No matter what, Sir Class Monitor will always be Sir Class Monitor. The young lad's sonorous and forceful voices declared their true feelings right now. Tong Ziqing's slender fingers curled up tightly. Looking at the student's serious expressions, her cold and elegant face revealed some gentleness as her beautiful eyes revealed some sparkles. Suddenly, Yiqing Luo placed one hand on her slender shoulder. Ziqing, this is a rare opportunity, don't miss it. Tong Ziqing heard her words and turned her head over unknowingly. She saw Yiqing Luo smiling coquettishly as she placed something in her hand. Following that, she leaned close to her ear and lowered her voice. The direction where he disappeared is the direction of the academy. Tong Ziqing was stunned again as she quickly understood the meaning behind Yiqing Luo's words. Her delicate face blushed slightly as she lowered her head to look at the thing in her palm. That was something which looked like a seashell. This was a seashell which was used to store sound. Of course, the stored words were not more than 10 sentences. Tong Ziqing didn't need to think to know that this seashell which was used to store sound should be the words which the students trusted Long Yunzhan. She clenched the shell tightly in her palm and thanked Yiqing Luo before speedily heading towards the direction of the academy. The fact that Tong Ziqing was in love with Long Yunzhan was known to all the students in the devil class. Seeing Tong Ziqing leave without looking back, he naturally knew what she was going to do. The solemn atmosphere just now suddenly exploded like a pot. The students raised their arms and cheered behind her. Goddess Ziqing, you can do it. Go, Goddess Ziqing. We all support you. It was not until Tong Ziqing's figure disappeared from everyone's sight that they finally stopped talking. Yiqing Luo clapped her hands and indicated for them to look over. All right, after the battle between you and Supreme Master Mo, in view of your poor performance, in future Master Mo's lessons will be extended by 2 hours. The students who were originally excited immediately had bitter expressions on their faces. What a small mood. Can't you let people be happy from top to bottom? Of course, even though they were grumbling, these students were still very willing to extend the teaching time. Just like what Yiqing Luo had said, this was not only for honor, for the class, but more importantly, for himself. Only when he became stronger, would he have the qualification and ability to protect the others. Looking at the student's eyes which were overflowing with radiance, Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled up in gratification. She believed that those who were willing to put in the hard work would definitely be rewarded. Chapter 713. Training time always passed by very quickly. In a flash, it was the end of every month's 3-day holiday. Yiqing Luo naturally gave them half a day of holiday to spend time with their families. The remaining 3 days were completely dedicated to the World Mercenary Group. During this period of time, their days were extremely tough. But their hearts were all satisfied. The moment the holiday arrived, the students were all excited. All of them wanted to give it a try. They wanted to take on missions and test their true strength. During this period of time, many things happened in the academy. For example, Yiqing Luo was later invited to the director's office. Naturally, on the surface, she was still inquiring about Supreme Mo. Yiqing Luo brushed it off. The director asked a few more questions, for example the results of Yiqing Luo and Ghost Doctor's pill refining skills etc. Yiqing Luo knew that the director intentionally sent someone to keep an eye on her. During this period of time, he had purposely appeared in the devil class and the library pavilion. Naturally she gave a half-truth and half-lies. When Dmo Xian heard Yiqing Luo's grumbles, he also appeared to chat with the director. He simply decided to stay in devil class. The director couldn't offend the main courtyard's master, so he could only let him be. For example, after the battle between Long Yunzhan and Dmo Xian, Long Yunzhan never appeared in devil class again. An Tong Ziqing. Yiqing Luo met Long Yunzhan at another ectoplasm treasure land. But before she could open her mouth, that pair of azure blue eyes flashed past a fluster as he disappeared from the ectoplasm treasure land. Obviously, Tong Ziqing didn't follow by his side. That day, after Tong Ziqing went to look for Long Yunzhan, what happened? To the extent that one or two of them didn't want to appear in front of everyone? Yiqing Luo thought of asking them clearly. But Xiao Jin and the others searched everywhere they could possibly go, but there were no traces of them. All the way till the holiday, the two of them still didn't appear. On the day of the holiday, Yiqing Luo met with Yi Fengyu. Not seeing him for a month, this brother of hers had grown taller by quite a bit. Now he was already half a head taller than her. And he had become more muscular. Yiqing Luo placed her hand over and could feel the distinct lines of muscles. What made Yiqing Luo even more surprised was Yi Fengyu's profound grade had advanced. Now, he was already a mystic profound rank 5 profound practitioner. Yiqing Luo heavily patted Yi Fengyu's shoulder. Little you, not bad, not bad. Work hard. Yi Fengyu, who was carrying his luggage, scratched the back of his head shyly. Master has taught me well, and Brother Xiaofan has helped me a lot. Mu Zifan? He actually came to the academy? Yiqing Luo had also heard about the 2 months in the academy. The Mu brothers of High Profound Class 2 were different from ordinary students. They did not need to cut off all contact with the outside world and had to stay in school for an entire month. They were free to apply to leave or enter the academy. After all, the Mu family only had 2 brothers. All the major medicine shops under the Mu family must be managed by someone. Mu Zi insisted on managing the Mu family's business. As for Mu Zifan, as the young master of the Alchemy Guild, there were many matters that required his attention. They did not graduate from the Heavenly Academy. On the Academy's side, they also needed the Mu brothers to be the Academy's advertisement. Naturally, they could accommodate the Mu brothers and give them special privileges. Ever since Mu Zifan became the Alchemy Guild's young union master, the Mu brothers would only come to the Academy for 2 or 3 days a month. This was also the reason why the Mu brothers caused an uproar when the freshmen entered the Academy. Unexpectedly, the Mu brothers actually came to the Academy this month. Chapter 7:14. It's okay, sister. I've already explained it to Brother Xiaofan. Seeing Yiqing Luo's expression, Yi Fengyu guessed what she was thinking about. The Mu brothers had indeed come to the Academy this month to look for Yiqing Luo. Mu Zifan first looked for Yi Fengyu. From Yi Fengyu's mouth, he found out that Yiqing Luo had been busy between Devil Class and the Library Pavilion. Yi Fengyu had tried to bump into Yiqing Luo at the canteen several times, but he didn't see her at all. Following that, they heard the news of Yiqing Luo and the cold-faced instructor coming to a draw. Yi Fengyu guessed that his sister was busy. Then, he told Mu Zifan about it. Once he heard about the library pavilion, Mu Zifan immediately understood something. He only asked Yi Fengyu not to disturb Yiqing Luo and came to the academy from time to synthesize Old Man Guiyu's guidance and give him some constructive suggestions. Yiqing Luo nodded her head. It seemed that she owed the Mu brothers even more. "Oh right, big sister, Brother Xiaofan wanted me to ask you if you're interested in participating in the Alchemy Union's alchemy competition. Yifengyu had been thinking about the task Mu Xiaofan had given him. A competition between alchemists? Yiqing Luo raised her brows in puzzlement as she was puzzled. Yifengyu shook his head, I don't know either. Brother Xiaofan only said that the Alchemy Union has sent out invitations to alchemists from all over the Nirvana realm. If you participate in the Alchemy Union's alchemy competition, you will be able to obtain a legendary alchemy cauldron as well as many rare medicinal ingredients. Brother Xiaofan said that if you agree, he will help you apply for leave to go to the Alchemy Union to compete. The so-called alchemist competition was probably to inject more fresh blood into the Alchemist Union. But it was true. Being an alchemist required a lot of time, money, and effort. If he had talent in alchemy, then joining the Alchemy Union would be a good choice. At least in terms of medicinal herbs and money, he didn't need to worry too much. Of course, the prerequisite was that one had to have talent in alchemy. He recalled the Alchemist Guild's command medallion that Mu Xiaofan had given him when they had first met. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips and immediately nodded, I'll go and have a chat with Xiaofan. Actually, Yiqing Luo wasn't particularly interested in the alchemist competition. Medicinal cauldron? She had the divine dragon medicine cauldron, so she did not need the other medicine cauldrons. However, she was a little interested in those rare medicinal herbs. Moreover, she owed the Mu brothers a lot of favors. If he refused Mu Xiaofan's invitation again, it would seem unreasonable. Yifengyu heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Mu Xiaofan had completed his task. The two of them walked out of the academy's gate one after the other. Outside the door, he bumped into Leng Fengying and Yiqing Jian, who were displaying their affection wantonly. Yiqing Qian was currently dressed in a purple rose-colored muslin long dress with a similar colored muslin draped over it, looking extremely gorgeous. Her exquisite hair was adorned with all kinds of jingling jewelry. She still looked elegant and dignified. Whereas Leng Fengying was the same as 1 month ago when he sent Yiqing Qian to the academy, welcoming her. On seeing Yiqing Luo, Yiqing Qian gave a noble harumph as her vision shot towards Leng Fengying, who had been staring at Yiqing Luo. Second prince, that slut, what's there to look at? Leng Fengying retracted his vision and retracted the deep meaning in his eyes as he gave a warm smile. Qing Qian, get on the carriage. This prince has already arranged a sumptuous lunch in the palace. His voice wasn't loud, but it absolutely wasn't soft either. When the surrounding students heard that, they all cupped their faces as they cried out in envy. Leng Fengying's words successfully pleased Yiqing Qian. Chapter 7:15. In the midst of these ladies' screams, Yiqing Luo's expression didn't change at all, as though Yiqing Qian to her was just an unimportant person. She didn't even have the mood to gossip. However, Yifengyu was extremely displeased. Yiqing Qian as the eldest sister, not to mention snatching her sister's fiancé, she didn't even have any intention to repent. After secretly seducing Leng Fenghua, he seduced the second prince. How could he have such a fickle elder sister? The more he thought about it, the more he disliked her. Even the way he looked at Leng Fengying was filled with hatred. Eighth brother. Suddenly, Yiqing Jian, who had just entered the carriage, lifted the curtains with her jade fingers. Her gaze was like a poisonous snake, entangling towards Yifengyu's direction. She lowered her body, and the long pendants in her hair clanked against each other. Everyone's vision immediately followed Yiqing Qian's line of sight and looked towards Yifengyu's direction. Yifengyu was stunned. Yiqing Qian curled her red lips and raised her chin arrogantly. Eighth brother's eyes seemed to be filled with dissatisfaction towards me. Yifengyu's face paled. He had totally not expected Yiqing Qian to directly accuse him of not liking her in front of so many people. After all, they still had the Three Springs sect's reputation on their shoulders. Even if they didn't get along, they wouldn't put all their disputes in the open in the eyes of outsiders. But Yiqing Qian said it out directly. The current Yiqing Qian really wasn't like the past her. It was as if he had completely thrown off all restraints and did not care about anything. For a woman with a twisted human nature, degenerate morals and shameless, do you still need to welcome her with a smile? Yiqing Luo took a step forward, shielding her brother behind her. She indeed didn't want to waste time with Yiqing Qian. Perhaps Ling Fengying had said something to Yiqing Qian and recently, Yiqing Qian didn't find trouble with her. But what Yiqing Qian shouldn't have done was to use him as an example. If she wanted to use Yi Fengyu to stir up trouble and scold the locust while pointing at the mulberry, that would depend on whether she was willing or not. Yiqing Luo's abusive words didn't arouse Yiqing Qian's emotions at all. Yiqing Qian had heard more than enough nasty words during this period of time. So what if I scold him? He still couldn't do anything to her, could he? She was still the object of envy in everyone's eyes. She was still in a high and mighty position, and many people were still afraid of her. Seventh sister, how much nobler are you compared to me? Yiqing Qian covered her mouth and chuckled softly. Her pair of arrogant and beautiful eyes curled into a mocking smile. Didn't you also cling on to His Majesty for the sake of status? For the sake of eighth younger brother, you can even accept teacher Guiyu. Also, that day at the Heavenly Fortune Inn, weren't all the men around you also under your skirt? She paused and seemed to think of something. She clicked her tongue and said, by the way, I heard that the two from the Mu family have come to the academy at least 3 times this month. Every time, they look for eighth brother to ask about your whereabouts. Could it be that you played with the feelings of the 2 brothers and deliberately hid from them? Saying that, Yiqing Qian giggled. Every word, coupled with her soft voice and emphasis, seemed even more ambiguous. Everyone's gazes towards Yiqing Luo instantly turned dubious. In their hearts, they had long set the shape of the Yi family's female. They were all certain that the Yi family's female was a dissolute and lecherous trash. 15 years of Yiqing Luo suddenly became extremely powerful, and even got involved with the overlord. Chapter 7:16. Moreover, Guiyu's change was too sudden. Guiyu had been living like a madman for decades in the Heavenly Academy. Even when the director asked him to teach or take in a disciple, he was rejected. Unfortunately, the moment Yiqing Luo came, Guiyu seemed to be possessed. Clamoring to take Yiqing Luo as his disciple. And after Yiqing Luo pushed Yi Fengyu out, Guiyu really agreed to take Yi Fengyu as his disciple. One must know that even if he took in students from the class of gods. Si Yanmu also wanted to be apprenticed to Guiyu but was rejected by him. Now Guiyu actually took in a new student who was recommended by Yiqing Luo, a new student who entered the low profound class as his disciple. When this matter spread throughout the entire academy, it became one of the mysterious events that everyone speculated. The most surprising thing was, Yiqing Luo was assigned to the waste class devil class. The next second, Guiyu, who refused to be a teacher for decades, directly applied to be a teacher in the devil class. It was said that he had done something extremely dangerous for the director in exchange for this opportunity. It could be seen how persistent Guiyu was towards Yiqing Luo. If there wasn't any special relationship, would the crazy Guiyu, for decades, support Yiqing Luo so strongly? Listening further, the matter of Yiqing Luo at the Heavenly Fortune Inn and having a meal with those men from the Imperial Palace had been widely spread in the academy for a period of time. Although those men were from the Imperial Palace. But if Yiqing Luo was really innocent with those men, then as a proper young lady, would she drink with so many men, till she was drunk? They responded with suspicion. Now that they heard Yiqing Qian's words and linked it to the overlord and Master Guiyu's attitude towards Yiqing Luo, they were even more doubtful. The students had naturally heard of the Mu brothers' matter. The Mu brothers and Yiqing Luo had once forced the 4th young master of the Yuqi family to retreat. This matter was known by quite a number of people at that time. Someone also mentioned the matter of the new students entering the academy, the Mu brothers had been to the academy and even looked in a certain direction. It seemed that the direction that the Mu brothers were looking at, wasn't it Yiqing Luo's direction? These words exploded in the mouths of the students. Soon after, someone mentioned that the Mu brothers had come to the institute 3 times this month. Each time, they were looking for Yi Fengyu, and they seemed to be talking mysteriously about something. After that, she also heard Yi Fengyu looking for Lu Xiaoyu to inquire about Yiqing Luo's whereabouts. It was obvious that the Mu brothers were here to look for Yiqing Luo. And Yiqing Luo indeed seemed to have been hiding from the Mu brothers. Could it be, had Yiqing Qian really guessed correctly? At the entrance of the academy, there was a sea of people. There were students, parents, and people from other forces. How powerful were the so-called rumors and slanders? Language could very well become a sharp weapon to kill. Just like now. If Yiqing Luo wasn't the current Yiqing Luo, not the Yiqing Luo with a strong inner heart. If it was someone else, they would have been insulted and ridiculed. They would have been stared at with disdain. Some would even look at them with a lecherous gaze. By now, he was probably so ashamed that he wanted to commit suicide. Yiqing Luo's eyes narrowed slightly as she couldn't help but burst out laughing. Sure enough, a loose woman's thoughts are so dirty. With such a filthy heart, no matter how gorgeous your clothes are or how noble your posture is, you can't hide or wash away your ugliness. She slowly walked towards the direction of the carriage. Step by step, it seemed to be extremely slow. But every step she took, seemed as though she had taken 10 steps. In a blink of an eye, she stopped in front of the carriage. In a blink of an eye, she stopped in front of the carriage. Chapter 7:17. Yiqing Qian's hand which was hooked on the carriage curtains instantly froze. Her face under her gorgeous makeup was slightly pale. Towards Yiqing Luo, she was afraid and terrified. But she wasn't so scared that she hid behind the carriage. She had already walked to this step. No matter what words were said, it would not be a sharp weapon to hurt her. She wasn't afraid that her actions would attract criticism from others. Anyway, she was already used to it. Looking at Yiqing Qian's eyes which were obviously filled with fear, but she pretended to be calm as she looked straight at her, Yiqing Luo's smile grew deeper. It said that only when your inner heart is in turmoil, would you use this kind of gaze to look at others. Yiqing Luo smiled lightly as her fingers which were caressing her chin were as slender as jade, like congealed fat. She smiled as her peripheral vision shot a look at Leng Fengying who was seated on the horse's back, as she scoffed softly. She wasn't afraid that Leng Fengying would get off the horse to stop her. Whatever she wanted to do, until now, unless she herself gave up, otherwise no one would be able to stop her. I heard that eldest sister is pregnant. Yiqing Luo's vision shot straight towards Yiqing Qian's abdomen. Her words had just ended when she saw Yiqing Qian pretending to be calm, as a sliver of panic flashed past her beautiful eyes. Yiqing Luo smiled. Her curved eyes outlined a demonic long arc, bewitching and moving. I wonder if this child is the former Crown Prince's King Ping's child or second prince's child? Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes as she asked this question like an innocent and naive young lady. This question set off a huge uproar. No matter how thick Yiqing Qian's makeup was, or how exquisite it was, she couldn't hide her pitch-black face. Leng Fengying who was seated on the horse's back turned stiff as he speedily turned his head towards Yiqing Qian. Yiqing Qian remained silent for a long time, not saying a single word. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes as she continued to use an innocent tone to ask. If it's King Ping's child, then. Eldest sister, you brought another man's child with second prince. Are you preparing to let second prince be a father or are you just pretending to be second prince's child? Saying this, she covered her mouth as she clicked her tongue. I wonder how King Ping who is far away in his fief would feel. Yes, seventh young miss. Leng Fengying could no longer tolerate it as he flipped down from the horse's back and called out to stop her. Yiqing Luo's words had completely turned him into a joke. He naturally couldn't allow Yiqing Luo to continue talking. Unexpectedly, when Yiqing Luo heard his voice, she immediately glanced sideways, her enchanting eyes sparkled with a teasing smile. If this child is the second prince's, then there's a big problem. This child is at least 1.5 months old. That is to say, while eldest sister and King Ping were secretly having an affair, she also had a relationship with the second prince. Leng Fengying's expression turned steely green in an instant. Yiqing Qian's fingers that were tugging on the curtains turned white, as if she was suppressing her anger. Between the two of them, no one spoke. Not even a word of rebuttal. The students in the surroundings immediately started to fill in the blanks. Yiqing Qian was pregnant. Whose child was it? This news, as compared to Yiqing Luo's unsubstantiated matters, was much more exciting. After all, the people involved in this love triangle were all big shots with great potential. A former crown prince. A second prince. 3 Spring City's famous number 1 beauty, number 1 genius beauty. The number 1 beauty and the former crown prince's relationship had already been announced to the world. Whereas the number 1 beauty had hooked up with the second prince, and before the storm had subsided, they were displaying their love wantonly, which was something which everyone had witnessed with their own eyes. Chapter 7:18. Pregnant, pregnant? Yi Fengyu pointed at Yiqing Qian in astonishment as he stared straight at her abdomen. Elder sister, you're pregnant? He was shocked and astonished. But in Yiqing Qian's ears, she only felt that he was playing along with Yiqing Luo, to ridicule her. The carriage curtains were flung down, covering Yiqing Qian's darkening face. The moment the carriage curtains were lowered, Yiqing Luo was standing near and could clearly see Yiqing Qian's trembling petite body as her beautiful eyes shot out a thick murderous intent. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a cold arc, trying to escape. Trying to leave so easily? She originally told Leng Fengying not to provoke her, so she didn't have the time to bother about Yiqing Qian. Since Yiqing Qian insisted on stirring up trouble, then she would have to bear the consequences of stirring up trouble. 7th Miss Yi. Leng Fengying saw the cold smile on Yiqing Luo's face as he frowned and stood in front of the carriage. These are all misunderstandings. This prince apologizes on behalf of Yiqing Qian for her nonsense earlier. His voice was very loud and his eyes were filled with sincerity. It was as if he had taken out his whole heart. Yiqing Qian's words to Yiqing Luo, based on his understanding of Yiqing Luo, were definitely slander. However, what Yiqing Luo said was the truth. Originally, after he found out that Yiqing Qian was pregnant, Yiqing Qian made a deal with him. As long as it was another month, he would directly acknowledge Yiqing Qian as his child. Giving birth could also be pretended to be premature. But now that Yiqing Luo exposed him in front of him, and even revealed the time of Yiqing Qian's pregnancy clearly. Apparently, Yiqing Luo was aware of Yiqing Qian's every move. Of course, Leng Fengying wasn't as dumb as Leng Fenghua. He knew that he couldn't blame Yiqing Luo for revealing this matter on the spot. Yiqing Luo should have known about Yiqing Qian's pregnancy long ago. But she didn't say it out, and from the start till the end, she didn't find trouble with Yiqing Qian. If it wasn't for Yiqing Qian who insisted on stirring up trouble, things wouldn't have escalated to such a stage. Right now, he could only use the name of the prince to testify for Yiqing Luo that what Yiqing Qian said earlier were all nonsense. There's no need for an apology. Yiqing Luo indifferently curled her lips, as her charming eyes were like torches, staring straight at Leng Fengying. She slowly approached him and spoke in a low voice that only the two of them could hear. Second prince, ever since you got together with my dissolute elder sister, you've been a joke in everyone's eyes. After she finished speaking, she slowly pulled away from the two of them. Leng Fengying's face sunk. Yiqing Luo's smile was like a flower, her curved eyes were filled with ridicule and coldness. Leng Fengying understood. Yiqing Luo was really angry. This also meant that from today onwards, he and Yiqing Qian were on the same side. Leng Fengying's heart thumped as he wanted to explain and refute. But when he opened his mouth, he didn't know where to start. He had been working with Yiqing Qian for so long. He hadn't even recouped his capital and he had to give up on Yiqing Qian just like that? But to form an enmity with Yiqing Luo, his future days would definitely not be unimpeded. Eldest sister is hiding in the carriage, is it because you have a guilty conscience? Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a smile as her figure suddenly swayed. He saw a red remnant shadow flashing past in the air. Following that, he saw Yiqing Luo stepping onto the carriage under Leng Fengying's astonished gaze. She crudely tore open the front of the carriage, and that exquisite and expensive carriage curtains and ornaments, casually throwing it into the crowd. Tightly, her slender fair fingers locked onto Yiqing Qian's neck. She directly lifted Yiqing Qian out of the carriage. Yiqing Luo stood on the carriage, while Yiqing Qian hung vertically by the side of the carriage, both her legs hanging in the air. A gorgeous face, flushed red from suffocation, as her eyes were protruding. Chapter 7:19. Ye's seventh miss. Leng Fengying swiftly went up, trying to save Yiqing Qian. But he had just taken a step when he heard Yiqing Qian moaning in pain. Leng Fengying's figure halted abruptly as the lines on his face remained gentle, but it was unable to conceal the anger in his eyes. Yiqing Luo's actions had not only rejected his future collaboration, it had also declared that there was no longer any possibility between them. Even if he gave up on Yiqing Qian now, it would not be able to quell Yiqing Luo's anger. Since there was no chance for him to collaborate with Yiqing Luo, he might as well grab hold of Yiqing Qian. Leng Fengying was able to get to where he was today because of his acute sense and the belief that he would never do a losing business. He had sacrificed so much for Yiqing Qian. If he couldn't get something of equivalent value from Yiqing Qian, then wouldn't all his efforts be in vain? It was finally because of Leng Fenghua's stupidity which allowed him to stand out, allowing him to portray a patriotic image. But just because of Yiqing Qian, how much reputation had he ruined? This prince has already apologized for Qing Qian's mistake, why must you force me? Leng Fengying's hands clenched into fists as he put on an earnest and well-intentioned look to persuade her but didn't get any understanding. Coupled with that gentle and refined look, it indeed made one believe in him. He felt that Yiqing Luo was being unreasonable. If an apology is of any use, it wouldn't be your turn to stand here and point fingers. Yiqing Luo's voice was cold as her eyes were filled with a biting cold glint. Leng Fengying naturally understood the deeper meaning in her words. If an apology was of any use, then would Leng Fenghua be able to continue being the crown prince after apologizing? Would Yiqing Qian be able to continue being the crown prince's concubine after apologizing? There were many things which could not be easily resolved with just an apology. Seeing Leng Fengying keeping silent, Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled upwards as she revealed a frosty smile. You have no bottom line, I do. You have no bottom line, I do. Her voice turned chillier by the minute. If Yiqing Qian only attacked her, perhaps she wouldn't have such a huge reaction. At least, she wouldn't have the intention to kill her. Yiqing Luo held on to Yiqing Qian, who was about to breathe her last as she slowly inched towards her. Her lips were close to Yiqing Qian's ears. Of all the things you shouldn't have done, you shouldn't have dragged the people I care about into this. This was her reverse scale. Dmo Xian, Old Man Guiyu, the students of Devil Class, the Mu brothers etc. These were all people who had given her great help. He was the person she was concerned about, the person she missed dearly. She would not allow anyone to insult her brothers, her team. Yiqing Qian's eyes were filled with terror. Yiqing Qian could clearly feel that her life force was gradually slipping away. She had no chance to move. His throat was being strangled, and it was extremely uncomfortable. She was powerless to struggle and could only quietly wait for death. And at the instant when he touched death, he heard Yiqing Luo's ghostly voice. Yiqing Luo was extremely close to her. Yiqing Qian could even feel the overbearing aura coming from Yiqing Luo. It was the kind of power that seemed to be able to control everyone's life and death. Let her heart, a burst of cramps. Controlling life and death. She didn't believe that Yiqing Luo really dared to kill her in public. You've indeed admitted that those are the people you care about, and their relationship with you isn't shallow. Yiqing Qian spat out the words from the slits of her teeth. Every single word she spat out, her face flushed a shade of red, until the very end, on her bright and beautiful face, her features were already protruding outwards. Chapter 720. Just at this moment, Yiqing Luo clearly saw. In the depths of those eyes which were almost protruding out, a wisp of black qi filled her pupils. Bit by bit, it seeped out. That black qi seemed to have its own consciousness. The moment it seeped out, it swiftly swept towards Yiqing Luo's hand which was strangling Yiqing Qian's neck. This wisp of black qi, thick and black, was extremely obvious. The surrounding students could almost see it clearly with their naked eyes. Clearly saw. From Yiqing Qian's eyes, balls after balls of black qi were emitting out. There were already quite a number of students shrieking in terror, as they rubbed their arms fiercely. This scene was simply too shocking. This was the first time to see such thick black qi emitting from a person's eyes. And that wisp of black qi could even initiate an attack? Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes, as the other palm flipped, a burst of profound qi directly struck towards that wisp of black qi. The black qi seemed to sense something, as it speedily dispersed, as it twined upwards from Yiqing Luo's palm wind. Yiqing Luo's 5 fingers moved, as a red feather fan slid out in her hand. Her fingertips flicked lightly on the fan handle, and within a few breaths, that black qi avoided Yiqing Luo's counterattack, and once again surged towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo seemed to be terrified, as she casually threw Yiqing Qian towards the crowd like throwing rubbish. The scene of Yiqing Qian's eyes, which could seep out black qi, was clearly seen by all the students present. Especially when Yiqing Qian's body was thrown out, they could still see a wisp of black qi, as it formed an arc in midair like black smoke. That black qi was emitted from Yiqing Qian's eyes. Naturally, when her body fell onto the ground, those students had already flocked away. Like avoiding the plague, no one dared to go near her. With a thump, Yiqing Qian's body landed heavily on the ground. That bright red dress on her, like a blossoming flower, broke into pieces of flower petals. Yiqing Qian's body rolled a few times on the ground, as the flower petals fell off, leaving only a white ball. It could almost be described as exposure of spring sunshine. The current Yiqing Luo was under thousands of pairs of eyes. Not a single piece of clothing on her. That fair skin, that slender waist, that plump softness, that everything could be seen clearly. Yiqing Qian only felt a chill run down her spine. The surrounding students, some exclaimed in shock, some screamed, and some hissed in disdain. Yiqing Qian realized what had happened. However, her limbs seemed to be bound by something. He couldn't move at all. She could only lie stiffly on the ground, allowing those pairs of eyes to see her whole body. Being insulted by others. All these, Yiqing Qian could take it. But, in front of thousands of people, he became like this. Even that woman couldn't bear it. No matter how hard Yiqing Qian's heart was. At this time, he was on the verge of breaking down and crying. Leng Fengying was completely stunned. Not only was he stunned by the black qi in Yiqing Qian's eyes, and Yiqing Luo's boldness. Leaving a lady's naked body at the entrance of the first academy, this was simply destroying Yiqing Qian completely. Even in death, Yi Qingqian would be spurned by the world. Ruthless, it was too ruthless. Even if it was him, he probably wouldn't be able to do such a ruthless thing. Yi Qingluo totally didn't feel that these actions of hers had caused much of an impact. After she flung Yi Qingqian away, she took out a handkerchief and wiped her hands carefully, as though she had touched something dirty. Chapter 721. Was it cruel? Not really. At least that was what Yi Qingluo felt. If Yi Qingqian knew her place and enjoyed the peace that Leng Fengying had obtained for her. At least before they revealed that the child was pregnant and Leng Fengying had taken over, Yi Qingluo didn't have the time to bother about their trivial matters. All these were Yi Qingqian's own fault. There was a limit to one's tolerance. Last time, Leng Fengying and the three old ministers had watched Yi Qingqian and Leng Fenghua's live broadcast. Yi Qingqian totally didn't know how to restrain herself. Then, let her be ruined in front of thousands of people. As long as Yi Qingqian still had a little bit of pride, she should learn to be smart. Yi Qingluo threw her handkerchief onto the ground. She turned her head and looked at the dumbstruck Yi Fengyu as she spoke calmly, "Little Yu, don't you feel that your eyes are dirty?" Yi Fengyu was still in a daze when he suddenly heard Yi Qingluo's voice as he nodded his head vigorously, "So dirty. Since it's dirty, why are you still standing here for?" Yi Qingluo's voice sunk. Yi Fengyu suddenly regained his senses as he immediately shook his head and followed behind Yi Qingluo. Yi Qingluo turned around and left without even turning her head back. Yi Qingqian's outcome was witnessed by the surrounding students. On seeing Yi Qingluo walking over, they all opened up a path. All of them were breathing carefully. 7th Miss Yi. Leng Fengying stood in a daze on the spot as he looked at Yi Qingluo's departing figure and subconsciously wanted to call out to her. Yi Qingluo didn't turn back. But she stopped in her tracks. She is, after all, your elder sister. Even if her nonsense hurt your friend, but you shouldn't do it in front of so many people. Leng Fengying's facial muscles twitched slightly. Before this, he had accepted Yi Qingqian by his side and had always declared to the public that he pitied her. After eldest royal brother experienced this matter, his mental state became extremely tyrannical and he would beat Yi Qingqian up whenever he wanted. Every time he saw Yi Qingqian covered in wounds, he simply couldn't bear it. Moreover, the matter that day was because he had led the old minister to the Crown Prince Palace, which led to such a thing happening. He took another look at Yi Qingqian's body and hugged her. Such an excuse would not only make the other old officials and commoners more or less accept it, but it would also make the old officials and commoners feel that the second prince was a kind-hearted person. They would support him even more. But Yi Qingluo had shown Yi Qingqian's naked body in front of thousands of people. He could no longer use pity as an excuse. It wasn't that he was kind-hearted or benevolent, he was stupid to the extreme. Yi Qingluo turned her head back and gave a slight smile, her long and narrow eyes sparkled with an innocent and harmless luster. "Anyway, she's already shameless, isn't it? In fact, I admire her courage. She was able to straighten her chest in the face of so many rumors and slanders, pretending that nothing had happened and putting on an unreachable appearance." Her tone was very sincere. But at first glance, it seemed like he was mocking something. But, after she mustered up her courage and walked out of the darkness, she still refused to be left out and let me ride her. So, don't blame me for treating her like one human. Ride. Something like that. Yi Qingluo raised her brows, her long curly eyelashes were like butterfly wings, forming a shadow under her eyelids. She obviously looked like a peerless beauty, but the words she said made one tremble in fear. "Since second prince likes to pick up trash, then hurry up and pick up this trash back, don't let her embarrass herself here." Saying that, Yi Qingluo left in an extremely suave and straightforward manner. Not too long later, she had already disappeared at the corner in front. The surrounding students heaved a sigh of relief because of Yiqing Luo's departure. Chapter 722. Yiqing Luo didn't leave immediately. After turning the corner, Yiqing Luo dragged Yifengyu and stood against the wall. She raised her index finger to her lips, indicating Yifengyu not to open his mouth temporarily. Following that, her figure was as light as a feather as she leapt onto the roof. She squinted her eyes as she stared intently at the naked Yiqing Qian, who was lying on the ground unable to move. Earlier, when Yiqing Luo was clutching Yiqing Qian's neck, the silver needle hidden in her fingertips had already pierced into Yiqing Qian's acupuncture point. If she didn't remove the silver needle, Yiqing Qian would not be able to move for the rest of her life. The current Yiqing Qian, because she had lost her life, the black qi had automatically integrated into her pupils, totally not a trace of it could be seen. Yiqing Luo looked carefully for some time but didn't detect any trace of the dark force's presence. "Lass, are you trying to dig out the dark forces behind Yiqing Qian?" Old man Tsang's voice rang in her mind. Yiqing Luo was releasing her perception as she carefully scanned every corner of the academy's surroundings, while replying to old man Tsang's words with her underworld god. "The people from the dark forces are much stronger than what I had imagined. I have no intention to go head-on against the dark forces." Yiqing Qian could freely use her dark forces' profound yin qi and could control it to carry out attacks. It was enough to show that her position in the dark forces wasn't low. Then today, she had made such a big embarrassment in the academy and exposed the black smoke like profound yin qi. The students present were young and didn't understand. But there was no lack of elders from the older generation who came over to fetch their own young masters and young ladies. There were also elders and guards who had more experience in the academy. Naturally, there would be someone who would detect the source of the black qi. It was impossible for the dark forces to hide in the dark like in the past. After a long time, the dark forces who were expelled from Nirvana Realm had once again appeared in Nirvana Realm. Not knowing what kind of uproar would be stirred up in Nirvana Realm after this news was spread. He did not know how the dark forces would deal with the news that the dark forces had returned to the Nirvana Realm. How would Yiqing Qian, who had exposed her profound yin qi, be treated? "Stop looking, I can't sense the dark forces' presence in the surroundings." Old man Tsang naturally knew what Yiqing Luo was thinking as he directly dispelled her thoughts. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly. Old man Tsang continued, "For these 3 days of training, try your best to stay with your team. If Dmo Xian is by your side, that would be even better." Yiqing Luo was stunned. "You mean? The dark forces have always been hiding in the dark. Today, because of you, the news of the dark forces returning to the Nirvana Realm has been exposed." That was to say, even if Yiqing Luo were to lie in wait in the academy. For the sake of safety, the dark forces would definitely not show up at this time. Whereas for Yiqing Luo to expose the dark forces, she would definitely be attacked by the dark forces. "Girl, after this holiday training ends, you can challenge the second floor of the Purgatory Tower." Old man Tsang hesitated for a long time before forcefully saying these words. Actually, old man Tsang wanted to wait for Yiqing Luo to have the ability to win before challenging the second story. However, at that time, even if he succeeded in the challenge, the effect would not be too great. Yiqing Luo belonged to the type of person who grew braver the more she suffered. The stronger her opponent was, the stronger she would be. It would be better to wait for the holiday training to end and maintain that state before challenging the second level. Not only would it stimulate Yiqing Luo's growth, it might even allow her to have an epiphany and advance at the juncture of life and death. Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up as she smiled widely. "Good. I will train well and fight for my best state to challenge the second floor of the Purgatory Tower." Chapter 723. Yiqing Luo and Yifengyu held hands as they returned to Three Springs Sect. Three Springs Sect's entrance was much bigger than last month's. Madame Yuchi led a bunch of maids as they waited at the entrance. Even the high and mighty old madam was sitting on a soft chair by the side. There were at least 40 over people in total. Sister. Yi Fengyu was stunned by this lineup. Yi Qingluo squinted her eyes as she carefully sized up Madame Yuchi's expression as her lips curled into a cold arc. Don't worry, just watch the show. When Madame Yuchi looked at her, there was a stiff smile on her face. But Madame Yuchi's eyes were filled with intense hatred and resentment. As though she couldn't wait to tear her into pieces. Probably. What happened at the Academy's entrance was known by everyone in Three Springs sect. Otherwise, if it was just to welcome Yi Qingqian, old Madam would absolutely not be sitting here. Madame Yuchi would also not reveal this. A twisted smile. Seeing Yi Qingluo and her brother, under old Madam's threatening gaze, Madame Yuchi smiled benevolently as she swayed her slender waist and walked over leisurely. 7th Miss, 8th Young Master, it's been hard on you this 1 month in the academy. Her tone was filled with a thick flattery. She walked towards Yi Qingluo and stretched out her hand in an attempt to hold Yi Qingluo's arm, putting on a look of a loving mother doting on her daughter. Since half a month ago, old Madam has been nagging about you and 8th Young Master's holiday, hoping for the stars and the moon. Finally you're back. However, Yi Qingluo's body moved slightly as she avoided Madame Yuchi's outstretched hand. Madame Yuchi's hand froze in midair. But after all, she was mother and daughter to Yi Qingqian. Being thick-skinned was their specialty. Even if it was awkward, Madame Yuchi's smile didn't change at all as she held onto Yi Fengyu's arm and continued smiling. Last month, you and 8th Young Master finally had a holiday, but you didn't spend it in the residence. Old Madam wanted to dote on you but didn't have this chance. This holiday, give old Madam a chance to stay at home and accompany old Madam. Yi Fengyu wasn't as agile as Yi Qingluo as he stood rooted to the ground. Obviously, she was stunned by Madame Yuchi's fawning attitude. Yi Qingluo's brows rose as her vision was fixed on Madame Yuchi's hand, which was holding onto Yi Fengyu's arm as she narrowed her eyes. Second concubine, the person whom you want to dote on is currently in Second Prince's residence, receiving Second Prince's banquet. His gaze was as sharp as a knife. Madame Yuchi immediately let go of Yi Fengyu and shrank back. Hearing Yi Qingluo's words, that fawning smile on his face stiffened. Madame Yuchi was on the verge of going crazy after receiving the news brought back by the servant. Her eldest daughter, the eldest daughter she had always been proud of, Yi Qingluo had actually exposed the news of her pregnancy in front of thousands of people, and even exposed her eldest daughter completely naked in front of everyone. Completely ruined the relationship between Yi Qingqian and the second prince. Madame Yuchi hated Yi Qingluo. To Madame Yuchi, Yi Qingluo was the murderer who ruined her daughter. If it wasn't for Yi Qingluo, Yi Qingling wouldn't have been destroyed and chased out of Three Springs sect residence, not knowing if she was dead or alive. If it wasn't for Yi Qingluo, Yi Qingqian would be the high and mighty crown princess, the most envied woman in the West Continent. Everything was Yi Qingluo's fault. If it wasn't for the fact that she no longer had a daughter to rely on. If it wasn't for the fact that old Madam used Three Springs sect's authority to threaten her. Chapter 724. But Yi Qingluo didn't understand her forbearance at all. She even brought up the matter of Yi Qingqian and the second prince in front of her. Yi Qingluo had lost all her face because of Yi Qingluo. From today onwards, Yi Qingqian's drawing would appear in countless brochures. How could the second prince possibly set up a banquet to entertain Yi Qingqian? Even if the second prince really loved Yi Qingqian, he would absolutely not block his own future to be with Yi Qingqian. Looking at the entire royal family, only the second prince could take on the heavy responsibility of the monarch. How would the current monarch allow the woman who was ridiculed by the common people to become the second prince's imperial concubine? Even if Yi Qingqian was willing to be the second prince's concubine, the monarch would never agree. Yi Qingluo was totally rubbing salt on the wound in her heart. If Yi Qingluo knew what Madame Yuchi was thinking, she would definitely scoff. Did she need to understand Madame Yuchi's forbearance? Did Madame Yuchi's lowly status have anything to do with her? In the end, it was because she had lost her daughter, and in order to survive in Three Springs sect, she disregarded her pride to please her. It was just for herself, a selfish act. Could she be blamed? Number 7, Number 8, come and help Grandma in. Just when the atmosphere was extremely quiet, old Grand Madame's hoarse voice came into everyone's ears. Yi Fengyu heard and immediately went forward. An old woman took over his luggage from him. Yi Fengyu respectfully held old Grand Madame's left hand and helped her up from the soft chair. Yi Qing Luo didn't go over, but didn't stop Yi Fengyu either. She just walked on her own way and walked into Three Springs sect. Yi Qing Luo wasn't an unreasonable person. Because of her hatred towards the Yi family, she denied the blood relationship between these people and her and Yi Fengyu. For old Grand Madame who didn't know how to respect others, Yi Qing Luo didn't want to give her the same respect. But she wouldn't be so deranged to not allow Yi Fengyu to show his respect. After all, Yi Fengyu was different from her. In this family, father and old Grand Madame treated him quite well. Since young, he had been taught to give for the Yi family and to respect all the Yi family's elders. The old ancestor was not angry. Supported by Yi Fengyu, the majestic group of people entered the Three Springs sect mansion. Old 7, you've been admitted to the Heavenly Academy for such a long time, but you haven't gone to the Ancestral Hall to explain to your mother. After dinner, go to the Ancestral Hall and have a heart-to-heart with your mother. The old ancestor's voice was calm and gentle, no longer as cold and stern as before. Ancestral Hall? The old ancestor actually asked her to go to the Ancestral Hall? One had to know that she, the so-called daughter of the first wife, did not even have the opportunity to enter the Ancestral Hall. Even if he was punished, the place he stayed the most was the woodshed. In the old ancestor's words, that was, "You're a good-for-nothing who doesn't even have a shred of Xian Qi. What right do you have to enter the Yi family's Ancestral Hall?" In old Grand Madame's eyes, she had never treated Yi Qing Luo as a part of the Yi family. Just because she was a good-for-nothing with no cultivation foundation. Today, the old ancestor actually allowed her to enter the Ancestral Hall and allowed her to talk to her mother? Sure enough, the older, the wiser. The minute she opened her mouth, she poked at Yi Qing Luo's soft spot. Entering the Ancestral Hall and burning incense for her mother had always been what Yi Qing Luo wanted to do. There were several times when Yi Qing Luo wanted to sneak into the Ancestral Hall and talk to her mother's memorial arch, but she was beaten out by the servant who guarded the Ancestral Hall. The old Grand Madame's words were to express goodwill to her. Express goodwill? Chapter 725. Now, looking at the entire Three Springs sect. The only woman who could be used by Three Springs sect was Yi Qing Luo alone. Yi Qing Qian was ruined. Yi Qing Ling's life or death was unknown. Only this seventh miss, who everyone looked down upon, had become the winner today. Not only did she push the Yi family who went against her to this state. She was also doing well in the Heavenly Academy. Old Madame naturally knew who was the target whom the Yi family wanted to please. However, Yi Qing Luo was no longer the Yi Qing Luo of the past. She would not forget all those things which had brought her endless pain just because of a little goodwill from old Madame. Trying to bribe her with a mere Ancestral Hall? Old Madame's thinking was too simple. What's more, even if she wanted to go to the Ancestral Hall now, who could stop her? Seeing Yi Qing Luo not speaking for a long time, Madame Yuchi, who was following closely behind, finally found a source to vent the anger which was suppressed in her heart. "Seventh miss, old Madame is wholeheartedly thinking for you, and this is the attitude you use to treat old Madame? Where's the etiquette which Grandpa taught you since young?" That pretended to be gentle and elegant face was now twisted and sinister, with a vicious look in between her brows. Yi Qing Luo stopped in her tracks. Old Madame and Yi Fengyu, who was behind her, also stopped in their tracks. A row of over 40 people turned their heads in unison and looked towards Madame Yuchi. Madame Yuchi saw that old Madame had also stopped in her tracks, thinking that old Madame was unable to suppress her anger towards Yiqing Luo and wanted to go along with her. A smirk of gloating sneer surfaced on her face. You look like a wild child who was born without a mother. But 7th Miss, you are after all the daughter of Three Springs Sect's first wife, and the future sect master. Every action and every word you say represents Three Springs Sect. While speaking, old Madame's gaze became increasingly sinister, that wrinkled old face faintly twitched. She was about to berate. However, he was stopped by a small white hand. Yiqing Luo smiled sweetly and shook her head at old Madame. Let her finish. Old Grand Madame wanted to get into Yiqing Luo's good books so naturally she wouldn't refute her request. Elder Madame did not stop her. Madame Yuchi's eyes became colder and colder. 7th young lady, how about this? I will find a few royal aunts to teach you etiquette. Don't embarrass the Yi family. After that, he smiled in the direction of the elder ancestor. Elder ancestor, don't you agree? The elder ancestor's fingers that held the walking stick tightened, and his eagle eyes flashed with a sharp luster. After staring at Madame Yuchi for a long time, Madame Yuchi, whose eyes were blinded by hatred, could not sense her ancestor's emotions. She did not receive the message from the elder ancestor telling her to shut up. Just at this moment, Yiqing Luo had already walked past old Grand Madame, walking directly towards Madame Yuchi. Madame Yuchi was so scared that she trembled and her legs went soft. Etiquette? Do you think you have the face to talk to me about etiquette? Yiqing Luo squinted her cold eyes as her lips curled upwards, curling into a cold arc of ridicule, talking about throwing the Yi family's face. Eldest sister who was born by her father and taught by her mother is totally deserving of it. She slowly raised her hand as she gently patted Madame Yuchi's shoulder, with an indifferent expression, but indeed you can't blame eldest sister. All these, eldest sister had learnt from second concubine. Take a look, snatching her own sister's man, flirting with a man regardless of the occasion, and even shamelessly seducing her ex-man's younger brother. TSK. Only second concubine is able to teach such a perfect female chick. Chapter 726. The surrounding maids and old maids naturally understood the meaning behind Yiqing Luo's words. That's right. As a mother, wasn't she the typical shameless one? Knowing that patriarchy had a wife, she still shamelessly stuck close to him, willingly becoming patriarchy's concubine, instigating patriarch to favor his concubine over his wife. Indeed, like mother like daughter. Both mother and daughter were the same. Madame Yuchi had not expected Yiqing Luo to use such a method to counter her. Being a concubine was indeed not a glorious thing to say. But in the entire Three Springs city, those men with potential, which one of them didn't have 3 wives and 4 concubines? What did she do wrong? Madame Yuchi's face instantly turned pale, as she was so infuriated that her heart almost bled. She had to admit that Yiqing Qian was Madame Yuchi's biological daughter. Even the habit of not daring to take responsibility for her mistakes, and pushing all the mistakes onto others, was exactly the same. Yiqing Luo. If it wasn't for you. If it wasn't for my daughter, how would she become like this? Madame Yuchi couldn't hold it in as she howled and pounced over. She stretched out her fingers, as she angrily tried to tear Yiqing Luo's hair. Men, bring Madame Yuchi down. Lock her in the firewood room and starve for 3 days. Old Madame raged as she berated sternly. A few coarse maids immediately rushed up and held onto Madame Yuchi, as they dragged her towards the direction of the firewood room. Madame Yuchi seemed as though she had gone mad, as she kept twisting her body and struggling. She was screaming Yiqing Luo's name at the top of her voice. If ordinary people heard that voice, they would feel that they were being haunted by a malicious spirit. Those coarse maids were mostly the guards who followed the Yi family's womenfolk, as they were strong and their profound grades weren't low. No matter how Madame Yuchi struggled, she was still forcefully brought down. Number 7, don't take Madame Yuchi's words to heart. Go have lunch with Grandma happily, Grandma has prepared a table full of good dishes for you. Old Madame retracted her gaze, as that wrinkled old face slowly smoothed out. Even her usually sinister eyes revealed an elderly's gentleness. Looking at old Madame in this state, it really had the feeling of a grandmother caring for her grandchildren. Yiqing Luo scoffed. Soon after, she stretched out her slender fingers and pressed on the space between her eyebrows. Her face revealed some exhaustion. Ancestor, I'm afraid that I won't have the appetite to eat this meal. In order to prevent Ancestor from losing his appetite and affecting Ancestor's body, I won't eat anymore. Without waiting for the elder Ancestor's response, he waved his hand and walked toward his courtyard. The old Ancestor's face instantly darkened. His slender and sinister eyes narrowed slightly. Her brows were tightly knitted together, making her wrinkled old face look even more eerie and terrifying. Yi Fengyu, who was standing at the side, had originally wanted to apologize on his sister's behalf and accompany the old Ancestor for a meal. After all, the current Yi family did not seem like a family anymore. Father came home less and less. Her brothers did not return home at all. In the huge Three Springs sect residence, only the other 3 concubines accompanied the elder Ancestor during meals. As a grandson, he naturally wanted to have a meal with his grandmother. But, at this moment, seeing old Madame staring at his sister's back view, Yi Fengyu's heart thumped. Old Madame still hated his sister. She did not treat his sister as one of her own because of her achievements today. Old Madame pretended to be benevolent in front of his sister, but obviously she had an ulterior motive. Old Madame wanted to make use of his sister. Chapter 727. Could it be that sister had seen through old Grand Madame's intention right from the start? Yi Fengyu really couldn't understand. Why did old Grand Madame and father hate sister so much? If it was before, sister was unable to cultivate to the profound grade and had embarrassed the Yi family, causing old Grand Madame and father to hate her, there was still a reason. But now, sister was the most outstanding child in the Yi family. She had the ability to become the future patriarch of Three Springs sect. Shouldn't father and old Grand Madame be happy? Why, his sister had clearly become stronger and had already met their requirements. Were they still unable to treat her as a family? His feelings of shielding his own people welled up in his heart, and Yi Fengyu immediately lost his appetite. He let go of old Grand Madame's hand. The young man still didn't know how to conceal his emotions. He shook his head and said, "Old Grand Madame, I'm tired too. I'll go back to the courtyard to rest and accompany you tonight." Old Eighth. Old Grand Madame's face turned even uglier. Even the usually obedient number 8 had been poisoned by Yiqing Luo, that wild lass. Yiqing Luo had just arrived at the entrance of the courtyard when she saw 2 maids bowing respectfully and welcoming her into the courtyard. At this moment, the courtyard was decorated with countless precious and beautiful flowers. The trees were green and full of vitality. There were also 3 maids trimming the flowers in the courtyard. Upon hearing footsteps, the maids stopped what they were doing and stood up one after another as they bowed respectfully to Yiqing Luo. "Welcome home 7th Mississippi." This lineup was definitely not smaller than the one at Three Springs sect's entrance when 40 over maids welcomed her. Another masterpiece from old Grand Madame? After entering the main hall, another 2 maids were diligently wiping the things in the main hall. The main hall had been refurbished and filled with precious porcelain. 7th Miss, these are all treasures personally selected by old Grand Madame. Each piece is worth 1,000 gold. 7th Miss can take a look, and if there's anything you don't like, I will change it for 7th Mississippi, the maid said respectfully and attentively. 7th Miss was the first in the entire residence to receive such treatment. Even the previous eldest Miss had not enjoyed such treatment. It could be seen that from today onwards, Miss Seven's position in the Three Springs sect would truly be able to enjoy the privileges of a young sect lord. However, when Yiqing Luo surveyed the surroundings, she didn't see the joyous expression which these maids had imagined. Instead, she furrowed her brows tightly as her beautiful face instantly darkened. Yiqing Luo speedily turned around and headed towards the direction of her bedroom. Damn it! She knew that the elder ancestor who was unaccountably solicitous must be hiding evil intentions. Sure enough, he had an ulterior motive. On the surface, old ancestor had replaced everything in her courtyard with incomparably precious treasures and porcelain. In reality, old ancestor was just using this as an excuse to search for the things in her courtyard. She had been a good-for-nothing for more than 10 years and was not favored at all in the room of the young sect master. What could there be that was worth old ancestor going through so much trouble? There was only one answer. That was, the 2 letters that her mother left for her. The elder ancestor's goal was the map in the letter. Sure enough, not far from the bedroom, they heard Ziling yelling at the top of her voice, "None of you are allowed to enter Mrs. bedroom. What do you want to exchange for? Give it to me, I will exchange for Miss." Chapter 728. No one is allowed to enter Mrs. bedroom. If you don't give it to me, don't even think about stepping through the door today. Ziling persistently opened her arms and blocked the door of the bedroom. Her pretty little face was full of anger. Before Miss left, she specifically handed the courtyard to her to take care of. She had no ability and failed to live up to Mrs. expectations. She let the second madam arrange the maids to renovate the whole place from front to back. The bedroom must not yield even half a step. Even if Ziling had never been to school, she knew that the bedroom was a person's biggest secret space. Before Miss left, she asked her to look after the courtyard. It must be because there was something in the courtyard that could not be touched by anyone except her. A few of the maidservants looked angry. Behind them, there were 2 maidservants who looked delicate but extremely agile. They rushed forward and grabbed Ziling's arms from both sides. Gotcha! Ziling screamed in pain. Both of her arms were directly fractured by the strength of the 2 maidservants' grip. The maid holding the red quilt sneered. Do you really think you are Miss Seven's personal maid? Do you really think that when Miss Seven becomes the master, you, a cripple, can follow her to success? You are crippled and can't do anything. Will Miss Seven want you? Don't think too highly of yourself. She strode over, freed a hand, and ruthlessly swung it at Ziling's face. Bang! There was a loud noise. The red quilt suddenly flew and fell to the ground with the wind. Soon after, a petite body tumbled a few times in the air and smashed heavily onto the red quilt. The maid who fell to the ground spat out a mouthful of blood and twitched in pain. The eyes of the 2 maids who held Ziling flashed, and they stared in the direction of the attack in horror. What they saw was a figure like a flame, walking slowly. She had her hands behind her back, and her red dress was like a flame. When she walked, the skirt fluttered like a phoenix spreading its wings, like a blooming rose. Her steps were light, elegant and noble. Seventh, Miss Seven, the faces of the 2 maids immediately turned pale. They let go of Ziling's arms and knelt down with a thud. 7th Miss, please spare our lives. 7th Miss, please spare our lives. Things are not what you think. Ziling, who had lost her support, went limp and fell to the ground. In the next second, her petite body was caught by a slender arm. Ziling's face contorted in pain. In a daze, she smelled a familiar fragrance. She forced her eyes open, and when she saw the familiar face that she had been longing for, a warm smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Miss Ling has finally waited for you. This smile, this light voice, made Yiqing Luo's heart tremble fiercely. The slender fingers that were clasped on Ziling's shoulders tightened one by one. She smiled gently and said, I'm back. When he looked up again, he focused on the two maidservants. Her brows became cold, and a cold light flashed in her long and narrow eyes. The smile at the corner of his mouth was gradually replaced by a frosty coldness. "It's not your turn to teach my people a lesson." Yiqing Luo's cold voice was like a ghost. "As for whether Ling will follow me to a meteoric rise, it's not your turn to speculate." Yiqing Luo paused and lifted her foot to hook the chin of one of the maidservants. "Who gave you the courage to speculate about the master's thoughts?" The maidservant shivered, her body shivering, and she kept apologizing profusely. Chapter 729. Ling heard Yiqing Luo's words in a daze and her eyes suddenly flashed. "Remember." Ling remembers. She would never forget what her young miss had said. Miss would not keep useless people by her side. If she wanted to stay by her miss's side, she must be able to become her miss's helper. Miss had said that those who had bullied them should fight back fiercely. Since those people had the guts to bully them, they should face the consequences. Otherwise, it would hurt Miss. Every single sentence that Yiqing Luo had once said flashed past his mind. Ling suddenly felt that her mind was becoming clearer. The heart-wrenching pain in his arm also seemed to have dissipated. "Remember, let me see if you have placed these words in your heart." Yiqing Luo slowly lowered her head and stuck it to her ear. Her bewitching voice was faintly discernible and clear. Ling's cold eyes were gradually covered with a layer of murderous intent. She slowly walked towards the two maids. The maids' faces suddenly turned pale and their eyes widened in horror. Looking at Ling, who was completely different from before, their hearts actually gave birth to a sense of fear. Yiqing Luo crossed her arms over her chest and directly retreated to the side. Ling picked up a flower pot from the ground and limped to the front of the maids. She lifted the flower pot in her hand and smashed it hard on the maid's head. The maidservant let out a blood-curdling screech as she fell to the ground, bleeding profusely. Yiqing Luo nodded with satisfaction. It was already very good for Ling to have such progress. After the sound of the flower pot breaking, Ling suddenly came back to her senses. Seeing the maid on the ground clutching her head and rolling in pain, Ling raised her hands and looked at them blankly. This is what I did? Wait a minute, weren't her hands fractured? Why suddenly? Ling's eyes suddenly widened and quickly turned to look at the miss who was standing behind her and smiling at her. Just now, young miss had only lightly pinched her two arms. She was in so much pain that she wanted to die, but the pain suddenly disappeared. Her mind also became much clearer. Even his fractured hands had recovered to normal. Yiqing Luo smiled and nodded. Ling, well done. Ling's eyes were filled with tears after receiving the praise from her mistress. Continue, let them know, in my courtyard, what kind of status do you have? Yiqing Luo continued speaking. Ling understood that Miss was helping her establish her authority in the Three Springs sect. In Ling's heart, other than Miss and Eighth Young Master, everyone else was someone who harbored ill intentions towards Mississippi. Even if she didn't like this power, for the sake of her mistress, she had to take advantage of her position to bully others. Ling had already made a vow when she personally fed that bowl of poison porridge into the mouth of Aunt Zhang, who wanted to kill Mississippi. For the young miss, even if her hands were stained with blood, she would not hesitate. Because of this, she wasn't as afraid as before. Ling's face was gloomy. She glared at the old women kneeling on the side and snorted coldly. Didn't you hear what Miss said? Capture these 3 lowly servants who offended Miss and send them to the courtyard at the back. I will teach them a lesson on behalf of Miss. Those old women had never expected that Ling, who had always been easy to bully, would show such a fierce side. Thinking back to the scene of Ling smashing the maid with the flower pot, and then looking at Yiqing Luo standing calmly at the side. Obviously, Ling's behavior was inspired by the 7th Mississippi. These old women were all shrewd people. At this time, they didn't care that these three people were from the second household. Chapter 730. Ling bowed to Yiqing Luo. "Miss Ling, will go over now." Yiqing Luo waved her hand, yawned and pinched her eyebrows tiredly. "Come to the bedroom after you're done and keep an eye on me. No one is allowed to disturb me." After a pause, her charming eyes flashed coldly. "Including the old ancestor?" Ling was startled and immediately nodded. "Yes, miss." Yiqing Luo yawned and entered the bedroom. The moment she closed the door, the exhaustion on her face suddenly disappeared. Her courtyard was now filled with spies. Not only the Yuchi clan's people, but also the people arranged by old madam. Could it be that they were really after the map in her hands? Impossible. This thought had just crossed her mind, but was instantly rejected by Yiqing Luo. After all, she was the only one who had read the letter left by her mother. Obviously, old madam didn't know about the secret of the letter and the map. Otherwise, she would have been threatened and bribed when Yiqing Luo was still young. Coaxing a child, especially a child who lacked love, was much easier than using carrot and stick to think of a solution. Today, this move of killing the chicken to warn the monkey was also a threat to those spies. Yiqing Luo returned to the ward, immediately lay down on the bed and immediately entered the Audioboo bracelet. Old man Tsang was already sitting next to the dragon god cauldron waiting for her. "Master, are you sure you want to refine the bone healing pill now?" A loud and clear voice came from inside the dragon god cauldron. Yiqing Luo took out the prepared herbs and placed them in front of the dragon god cauldron. Yes. This was the only purpose of her return to the Yi family. To cure Ling's leg. The dragon god cauldron shook for a while and saw a golden light pass by. Detailed steps of the bone healing pill quickly appeared in the air. So detailed that the number of herbs to put in was clearly written. Yiqing Luo quickly skimmed through the steps. Therefore, she could already recite the prescription of the bone healing pill backwards. But after all, there was only one chance, so it was better to be careful. The herbs used in the bone healing pill, profound ice immortal root and infant grass were extremely rare herbs, which meant that the bone healing pill belonged to the highest grade. If it was the previous Yiqing Luo, controlling the legendary grade dragon god cauldron, she would absolutely be unable to do so. However, he had gone through torturous training under the hands of a medicine ancestor-level alchemist. The current Yiqing Luo, no matter if it was flame control or pill refining skills, had already made huge improvements. Yiqing Luo sat cross-legged in front of the dragon god cauldron, as she placed the medicinal herbs into the cauldron in an orderly manner. Then, he opened his palm and slammed it towards the direction of his heart. Clusters of flame sizzled in her palms. That flame was different from the usual flames. Instead, it was a kind of red, like fresh blood. Yiqing Luo threw the originally palm-sized ball of flame towards the direction of the cauldron. In a split second, that flame burned extremely vigorously, completely covering the cauldron which occupied half of the space inside the Audioboo bracelet. The entire cauldron seemed to be covered in a layer of blood. Blood flowed beautifully. This was an extremely pure profound jade heart flame. People who possessed this kind of heart fire could be said to be natural-born alchemists. Old man Tsang saw it extremely clearly from the side. Under the cover of the hazy white spiritual qi, that pair of eyes that had experienced the vicissitudes of life, was suffused with a trace of faint gratification. This lass was indeed intelligent, a person who was born to become an alchemist. To tell the truth, it could be said that through his guidance, Yiqing Luo was personally pushed by him to be someone else's disciple. Old man Tsang actually rejected it in his heart. But, for Yiqing Luo's future, he could only let go. Chapter 731. After a while, the entire Audioboo bracelet was surrounded by a faint medicinal fragrance. This medicinal fragrance was different from other medicinal fragrances. It was extremely fresh and elegant. If an ordinary person smelled it, their whole body would be relaxed and extremely satisfied. The medicinal fragrance became more and more intense and gradually overflowed from the azure dew bracelet. Ziling, who had finished dealing with the three maids, was standing at the bedroom door in high spirits, carefully observing the surrounding situation. No one was allowed to approach the bedroom. Suddenly, he smelled the fragrance of the refined medicine coming from inside the room. Her heart jumped, afraid that her miss was injured and secretly bandaged in the room. As soon as she rushed into the room, she saw a scene that she would never forget for the rest of her life. Yiqing Luo was lying on the bed, a trace of enchanting red light seeping out from Yiqing Luo's wrist little by little. In the blink of an eye, her whole body was shrouded in red light. It was Ziling's first time seeing such a situation and she was frightened. The scent of medicine filled Ziling's nose. She did not know what her miss was doing now. But being in the Three Springs sect, Ziling knew that she must not disturb her miss at this time, let alone let others disturb her Mississippi. Ziling became more alert and guarded the door for her Mississippi. At this moment, the person on the bed suddenly sat up straight like a spring. Ziling, who had just stepped out of the bedroom, was startled. She turned her head and met a pair of enchanting red eyes, enchanting and seductive. Ziling was dumbfounded on the spot. Yiqing Luo closed her eyes and suppressed the profound qi that was stirred up by the medicinal refinement. When he opened his eyes again, the red light in his eyes had already disappeared. Miss. The little girl was still in a daze. Yiqing Luo's lips curled up and waved at Ziling. Ziling walked over in a daze. Yiqing Luo flipped her palm and took out a delicate wooden box from somewhere and handed it to Ziling. Ziling blinked her eyes, puzzled. For you. Ziling did not understand and obediently took it. But if it was a gift from her miss, she would keep it well, even if it was a pile of shit. Under Yiqing Luo's instruction, Ziling opened the wooden box. Inside the wooden box was a sparkling and translucent medicinal pill. The entire room was instantly filled with the fragrance of medicine. Ziling stared at the elixir in the wooden box and stared at it for a long time. Miss, why, bone healing pill. Yiqing Luo said concisely, after taking it, I will perform acupuncture on you for 2 days and your leg will be healed. Completely healed? Ziling's eyes widened in disbelief. She tightened her grip on the wooden box. Yiqing Luo nodded with a smile, I promised you that I will cure your leg. Soon after, the little girl closed the wooden box with wild joy and hugged it in her arms. She was so excited that tears rolled down from the corner of her eyes. Joy couldn't be used to describe his current mood. Especially when he saw the young Mrs. Gentle smile, he couldn't help but sob. Her young mistress had actually remembered the promise she had made to her deeply in her heart and had even taken action to fulfill it. How lucky was she to have such a master who doted on her? Ziling's tearful eyes suddenly became firm. She knelt on the ground with a thud and kowtowed to Yiqing Luo fiercely. Miss, I, Ziling will follow in your footsteps forever. Chapter 732. A long time later, she, who was already known as Fairy Ziling, was asked what was the reason for her rapid growth from a crippled maid to become Yiqing Luo's right-hand man. Ziling Fairy said that she would never forget her miss's warm palm on top of her head, dispelling the frost in her heart for more than 10 years. It was her own miss who gave her enough courage. Gave her the courage to stand by Yiqing Luo's side. Not worried about being abandoned, not worried about being abandoned. After Ziling had taken the bone healing pill, Yiqing Luo had started the treatment with acupuncture and profound qi. On the day before the holiday, Yiqing Luo specially looked for Ghost Doctor to carefully confirm the treatment process. At this time, Yiqing Luo's hands were smooth, calm, and quickly and accurately inserted the acupuncture points. This kind of acupuncture, every needle was as painful as scraping the bone. Yiqing Luo had inserted a total of 91 needles. Ziling was completely in pain, her face was pale and her head was full of cold sweat. But from the beginning to the end, Ziling stubbornly did not make any sound. Not even a cry of pain. Yiqing Luo withdrew her hand and wiped the sweat on her face. Looking at Ziling, who was biting the white cloth and breathing heavily, the smile in her eyes became more gentle. She did not expect Ziling to be so tolerant. She really trusted her wholeheartedly. Her willpower was so strong that she was ashamed of her inferiority. "Don't get off the bed before your legs are healed, I will find a maid to take care of you." Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes and said faintly. Ziling's face immediately showed fear. "Miss, you can't do that. Now Miss has finally gotten the attention of old madam, if for old madam had always been the most concerned about etiquette. A maid lying on the bed, and still let a maid to take care of her? If this were to be passed to old madam, wouldn't Miss be punished? Do you think your Miss needs to look at old madam's face?" Yiqing Luo shook her head and directly interrupted Ziling's words. "You just need to listen to my arrangements." Ziling's lips slightly pursed, obviously still worried that because of her relationship, her Miss would be implicated. "Do you still want to follow in my footsteps? Do you still want to train hard after your legs are healed and accompany me to the Heavenly Academy?" "Yes." "Then be obedient." Yiqing Luo looked at Ziling's teary eyes and couldn't help but rub her head again. If Ziling were to dress up properly and gain some weight, she would definitely be a great beauty in the Lolita category. The current Yi family would grant Yiqing Luo's every request. Even if old Grand Madam had some words against Yiqing Luo because of her rudeness. But now, who would dare to offend this increasingly dazzling seventh young mistress? This was the last woman in the Yi clan who could bring honor to the Yi clan. Even if the elder ancestor was angry, he had to endure it. Of course, there was another important point. Because of Madame Yuqi's rudeness towards Yiqing Luo, old Grand Madam had already stripped away Madame Yuqi's authority and handed it over to third concubine, who was also Madame Baiming. This Baiming clan was the concubine daughter of a great clan from another continent. Speaking of which, he and Baiming Liancheng from the devil class had a little bit of kinship. Yi Tianquang had once fallen in love with Lady Baiming at first sight when he was working in another continent. He immediately married her and brought her back to the Yi family, becoming the Yi family's third concubine. It had been a few months of sweetness. Until both Madame Yuqi and Lady Baiming became pregnant one after another. Yi Tianquang was originally a person who was unwilling to be left out, so he had another 4 wives. This was a story for another time. But, in her impression, this Lady Baiming only had one son. She was also the most peaceful one in the backyard. Chapter 733. But Yiqing Luo thought that this Baiming clan was the smartest woman in the backyard. She didn't fight or snatch, but could give birth to a son and raise him. What the backyard saw the most was the battle between Madame Yuqi and the fourth branch. On the contrary, Baiming clan was so quiet that people had completely forgotten her existence. If it wasn't for her son, who was in charge of all the expenses of Three Springs sect, the entire Yi family would have treated her as if she didn't exist. That's right. Baiming clan's son was the Yi family's housekeeper, the second young master Yi Fengru. Now that Madame Yuqi had fallen and Baiming clan had taken over, it had deeply confirmed Yiqing Luo's guess. Not to mention the collapse of the second branch, the third branch would naturally take over. That woman from the fourth branch, who could fight with Madame Yuqi for so many years, was definitely not a good person. But she had fallen into the hands of the second branch, Baiming clan. Baiming clan was definitely the smartest woman. Just like now, she knew how to see the situation clearly and draw Yiqing Luo to her side. Hearing that Yiqing Luo wanted a well-behaved and smart maid to take care of Ziling who had caught a cold, she quickly sent her daughter over. Yiqing Luo had seen this maid before. She was indeed a smart maid, named Hong Mei, extremely well-behaved. When taking care of Ziling, she would never ask or say a word to others. In this Three Springs sect, which was filled with Madame Yuchi and old Madame spies, she was able to obtain this peace. Yiqing Luo remembered this favor in her heart. That night, Yiqing Luo went to the ancestral hall alone. This news quickly reached old Madame's ears. Old Madame rushed to the ancestral hall with the help of Baiming clan. Hearing this news, it would be a lie if old Madame said she wasn't angry. It had only been a day since she came back and Yiqing Luo had relied on her current power to be arrogant again and again, not even putting her, old Madame, in her eyes. She was the dignified old Madame of Three Springs sect. When had she been so despised by a junior? Since Yiqing Luo came back. She tried every means to persuade her and even brought it out of the ancestral hall to let Yiqing Luo see that slut to please her. Yiqing Luo pretended not to hear. But at this time, she came to the ancestral hall alone. Wasn't this a slap to her face? She kindly invited Yiqing Luo to have a meal with her, but Yiqing Luo totally ignored her. In the evening, she shamelessly asked to see her again, but was told that she was taking care of a maid who had caught a cold, so she wouldn't be accompanying her. Even Yi Fengyu had rejected her. The old ancestor was completely enraged. His heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys were so angry that they were about to be displaced. Yiqing Luo had never treated her as an elder, or as a grandmother. She couldn't even compare to a maidservant. Taking care of a servant girl and refusing to accompany her own grandmother? Only Yiqing Luo could use such a matter-of-fact tone to reject her. Right now, old Grand Madame had apparently forgotten that she herself had never treated Yiqing Luo as her own granddaughter. At this moment, Yiqing Luo was kneeling on the praying mat in the ancestral hall, her gaze staring deeply at the hundreds of memorial tablets on the shelf. Her mother's memorial tablet was placed in the leftmost corner. The two racks were arranged from top to bottom. But at the very bottom, on the far left, the arrangement of the tables was obviously not as neat as the top. Obviously, it had been tampered with. Her mother's memorial tablet was probably placed here temporarily by the old Grand Madame to take the opportunity to please her. Yiqing Luo snorted lightly. She really didn't understand. Her mother, as the legal wife of Yi Tianquang, was also included in the Yi family's genealogy. From the moment she married into the Yi family, she had followed Yi Tianquang wholeheartedly and gave birth to a son and a daughter for him. Until her death, she had never complained about Yi Tianquang. Chapter 734. Yiqing Luo stood up and straightened her mother's tablet, placing it properly. Following that, she knelt back onto the praying mat. The entire ancestral hall was in silence. The huge incense burner was filled with densely packed burning incense as the smoke curled upwards, making the ancestral hall even more sinister. The candlelight swayed, elongating Yiqing Luo's shadow. But it also softened the contour lines on Yiqing Luo's face. Her pair of charming eyes were filled with traces of gentleness. Mother. A soft sigh spilled out from her lips. In her heart, there were many questions and many words that she wanted to say to her mother. But now that she was here, she couldn't say anything, and wasn't willing to say anything. Yiqing Luo believed that there was a soul in this world. Otherwise she wouldn't be here. Since her mother had already passed away for so long, why should she let her mother worry for her even in the afterlife? Mother, I will take good care of little Yu. When little Yu really grows up, I will let him become the next sovereign. Yiqing Luo muttered softly. This was something that she had planned right from the start. She had no interest in the position of Three Springs sect sovereign. After all, she still had her own group of brothers and she still needed to lead the world group to roam the entire Nirvana realm. She couldn't possibly bind herself to Three Springs sect, to the West Continent. Just at this moment, Yiqing Luo's ears twitched as she heard a burst of mixed footsteps outside the ancestral hall. They came really quickly. Looked like old Grand Madam was really angered by her. Look at these footsteps, it was filled with energy. Before Yiqing Luo could stand up, the ancestral hall's door was pushed open fiercely as old Grand Madam's hoarse roar rang behind her. Old 7. Who allowed you to come to the ancestral hall alone? Yiqing Luo slowly stood up and gently patted the creases on her clothes before turning her head around. Old Grand Madam had already walked into the ancestral hall and that aged face was filled with anger. His sinister long eyes seemed as though it was dipped in poison as he stared fiercely at her. This was the first time Yiqing Luo saw such obvious disgust on old Grand Madam's face. She had crossed old Grand Madam's bottom line this time round. Outside the ancestral hall, Yiqing Luo saw the Baiming clan in her memories. She had a gentle appearance and belonged to the obedient type. She was dressed in a plain blue matriarch robe, and her temperament was like that of a white lotus. Even though she was the mother of a son, she still looked like a woman in her 20s. This kind of white lotus temperament was absolutely different from Madame Yuqi and Yiqing Qian's white lotus lady temperament. The white lotus of the Baiming clan was a true white lotus. It was the kind of feeling that came out of the mud but was not tainted, the feeling of being clean but not bewitching. At this moment, Bei Mingshir's pair of lukewarm beautiful eyes were looking at Yiqing Luo worriedly. Behind her, there were 4 rough old maids. Yiqing Luo wasn't the slightest bit afraid of this stance. On the contrary, she revealed an enchanting smile. Didn't old madam say that I can come to the ancestral hall to meet my mother? Yiqing Luo spoke extremely slowly, as though there was nothing wrong with her way of doing things. The elder master was so angry that his entire body was trembling. Yes, she had indeed intentionally used the excuse of letting Yiqing Luo meet that slut in the ancestral hall, to please Yiqing Luo. But it didn't mean that Yiqing Luo could come to the ancestral hall alone. Moreover, Yiqing Luo didn't express her stance at that time. It was obvious that she had rejected, wasn't it? Now she came to the ancestral hall alone and was still so daring. Did she really think that there was no one else in the Yi family? The more old Grand Madam thought, the more she felt that she was being despised by a junior. Chapter 735. These words sounded like a granddaughter's grumbling to her grandmother. But listening carefully, one could hear the thick sarcasm in Yiqing Luo's words. What was said casually? What was meant by coaxing her to be happy? Wasn't this implying that her Yi family's old madam was full of lies, deceiving the younger generation? But unfortunately, old madam couldn't say a single word of rebuttal. Yiqing Luo gazed deeply at her mother's tablet, her voice was cold. I'm glad that I came to the ancestral hall today. The main door of the ancestral hall was opened and the wind blew into the ancestral hall. The candlelight swayed even more violently. Pulling Yiqing Luo's figure, it kept on shaking. It made half of her side face, as hazy as a ghost. In this ancestral hall, it looked extremely gloomy. Old Madam frowned, as her skinny fingers gripped the walking stick tightly. The old man's heavy breathing was extremely clear in the silent ancestral hall. Old Madam suppressed the surging panic in her heart. This was the Yi family's ancestral hall, all the ancestors of the Yi family. Even if the first madam really appeared, she would absolutely not do anything to her. If she wanted to find someone, it would be Yiqing Luo, that slut. Thinking of this, old madam's heart calmed down. If old madam doesn't treat my mother as a Yi family member, then pass my mother's ashes and tablet to me. I'm willing to worship my mother personally. As Yiqing Luo said, her gaze had shifted from the tablet back to old madam. That pair of long and narrow eyes, under the backlight of the candlelight, seemed to be burning with 2 balls of flames. There was no enchanting look in the past. There was only a piercingly cold gaze. Presumptuous. Old Madam couldn't hold back the anger in her heart, as she shouted sternly, "When did the Yi family treat you and your mother badly? When did the Yi family not treat you as a Yi family member? The Yi family had painstakingly raised you, yet you dare to say such treacherous words in front of your ancestors." Old Madam seemed to be very angry, as she raised her hand and landed it on Yi Qingluo's face. "It's my dereliction of duty that I didn't personally teach you the Yi family's rules. Now in front of the ancestors, I'll teach you how to respect the elders properly." When the slap landed, the great ancestor's voice had already turned into one of gnashing teeth. His gloomy eyes were also filled with intense disgust. "Ancestor! No!" Lady Baiming stood at the door, anxious. As a concubine, she did not have the right to enter the ancestral hall. However, how could the great ancestor listen to Baiming clan's pleas at this moment? Yi Qingluo naturally saw through old Madam's emotions. How could he not see the profound qi lingering in the palm of the old ancestor? His words were accusing her of not knowing the rules. The truth was that he was infuriated by her and wanted to use this opportunity to teach her a lesson. If this slap really landed on her face, the teeth in her mouth would probably fly out. What's more, she would have to spend the next half a month in bed. What a ruthless ancestor! He was so ruthless to his own granddaughter, and he still had the nerve to say that he didn't treat them as outsiders. "I'm so sorry." She would not believe a single word that the elder ancestor said. When old Madam's slap landed, Yi Qingluo's body was like lightning, as she speedily retreated a few steps. Her heel pressed against the fruit and incense burner on the table. Old Madam's slap indeed used up all the strength in her body. But the slap landed on empty air. Because of inertia, how could the old man stand firmly? His body bent forward, and his whole body leaned forward. "Old Madam!" Lady Baiming was so scared that her face turned pale. At this moment, she couldn't be bothered about whether she had the right to enter the ancestral hall, as her figure flashed and speedily rushed into the ancestral hall, barely catching old Madam. Chapter 736. On the contrary, Yi Qingluo stood calmly by the side of the table, looking at the both of them expressionlessly. Old Grand Madam's old face turned pale as her body trembled. Since when had she suffered such humiliation? A junior actually made her lose all her face. If she really fell to the ground because she had hit Yi Qingluo's palm, her Yi family's old Grand Madam's face would be completely ruined. Vile spawn! Vile spawn! After old Grand Madam regained her senses, she pointed at Yi Qingluo and berated her. Baiming supported old Grand Madam and comforted her gently. "Old Grand Madam, don't be angry, don't harm your health. Seventh Miss is after all still a child." She was upset because she saw Madame Ye's memorial tablet. "Please don't be calculative with 7th Mississippi," her voice was extremely gentle and could calm one's heart. Saying that, Baiming shot a sideways glance at Yi Qingluo, hinting her not to be angry with old Grand Madam. Towards this Baiming Yi Qingluo was still unable to see through her. It seemed that, this was the only lady in Three Springs sect who wholeheartedly thought for the Yi family. Baiming concern towards old Grand Madam didn't seem fake. Baiming helped her to explain for the matter earlier and calmed her temper, which seemed to be sincere. If all these were just acting, Yi Qingluo had to admire Baiming superb acting skills. Now that she owed Baiming a favor, she naturally wouldn't reject her face. She immediately kept her arrogance. "Today I didn't think it through and entered the ancestral hall without permission. But I still hope old Grand Madam will consider my suggestion earlier." Saying that, she turned around and left the ancestral hall. This was considered as giving them a way out. Under Baiming gentle soothing words, old Grand Madam's expression finally calmed down. "Old Grand Madam, look, 7th Miss has been thinking about her mother's memorial tablet. Aren't you trying to please her? Why not let this memorial tablet be worshipped to 7th Mississippi? In this way, 7th Miss will be happy and will be grateful to you, isn't it? Old Grand Madam's expression sunk when she heard Baiming clan saying that she wanted to please Yi Qing Luo in front of everyone. But looking at the serious look on Lady Baiming's face, it was clear that she was sincerely trying to help him out. He could only suppress his anger. We'll talk about this later. Help me to the study. I'll write a letter to Wild Heaven. After Yi Qing Luo came out of the ancestral hall, she went to Ziling to check on the situation. After taking the bone healing pill and going through Yi Qing Luo's unique acupuncture technique, Ziling clearly felt that her legs were gradually recovering. Because, the leg that had been crippled for 10 years had actually regained feeling. Even if it was painful and itchy, as if ants were devouring her bones, Ziling was still ecstatic. As long as she could feel it, it meant that her originally crippled leg could be saved. Hong Mei was by his side, holding a bowl of boiled medicinal soup. Hong Mei would not neglect Ziling just because she was a maidservant. Hong Mei had brewed this bowl of medicine according to Yi Qing Luo's instructions, without a single mistake. Yi Qing Luo was reassured as she instructed Ziling and passed tomorrow's dosage to Hong Mei before leaving Ziling's room. Tomorrow, she still had to meet up with the World Group's youngsters. Then she would return to Three Springs Sect to perform acupuncture on Ziling tonight. Yi Qing Luo returned to the bedroom, and before she could walk to the bedside, an arm suddenly wrapped around her waist from behind. Following that, a sandalwood scent assaulted her nostrils. Why are you here? Yi Qing Luo wasn't shocked as her body softly snuggled into his arms the moment the man wrapped around her. Dmo Xian rubbed against her neck as his warm breath sprayed onto her skin. Chapter 737. You asked Feng to investigate the Baiming clan. How could I not come? Dmo Xian couldn't help but plant a kiss on her neck as his long arms suddenly exerted strength, turning the woman's soft body to face him. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips and scoffed lightly. That brat of Feng, he informed you of everything. Does he have to tell you even if I go to the toilet a few times? Dmo Xian's glimmering peach blossom eyes curved into a demonic charm. When I'm not around, I want to know everything about you. Then, he lowered his head and whispered into her ear, as for how many times you went to the toilet, I hope you can, tell me yourself. You, holy shit. Die. Change. Pervert. She admitted defeat. Dmo Xian's gaze became even more indulgent as he looked at the angry face of the woman he loved. He held Yi Qing Luo's little hand tightly and pressed it into his embrace as he gave a low laugh. The North Ming family's people are all very intelligent. Compared to power and influence, they would prefer a peaceful life. You're here just to tell me the results of your investigation personally? Yi Qing Luo raised her brows as her chin rested on his chest and looked up at him. Dmo Xian's dark eyes were deep and serene as he gazed deeply into her eyes, finally falling onto her tender lips. After meeting his gaze, Yi Qing Luo seemed to have realized something as her cheeks flushed red. She hammered his chest with her fist and buried her head in his arms. What are you looking at? Look at you. His clear and bright voice was as mellow as fine wine, intoxicating her heart. His gaze was extremely serious. As though he wanted to trap Yi Qing Luo into his own flesh and blood. At this moment, it was not only his cheeks that were burning hot. Even her body was burning like a raging fire. Little Luo, Dmo Xian's gaze was gentle and his voice was extremely low. He gently propped up Yi Qing Luo's little face as his eyes congealed on her blushing face. Such a lil Luoer was even more tempting. Yi Qing Luo's little heart was thumping wildly. She could clearly see the seriousness in the man's eyes. She could clearly see the flames in his eyes. Yi Qing Luo's fair little hands caressed his cheeks. This was a face she was familiar with. It was not the fake face of Supreme Mo. Her hands cupped Dmo Xian's face as she tiptoed and kissed his lips. How could Dmo Xian miss the initiative of his beloved woman? His slender fingers clasped the back of her head, and the arm around her waist tightened, deepening the kiss. His kiss was forceful and domineering. Yiqing Luo merely took some time before she sank into oblivion and went limp in his arms. Dmo Xian only released her swollen lips when both of them were panting heavily, as he closed his eyes in satisfaction. Yiqing Luo's face and ears were flushed red as she laid on his chest panting heavily when she heard the man's husky magnetic voice resounding by the side of her ear. Lil Luo, being so proactive, is it because of the excitement from the academy? Which made you feel guilty towards me? Yiqing Luo raised her eyes and stared at him angrily as she raised her fist and hammered down heavily. Dmo Xian held her fist and placed it on his chest as he laughed heartily. His chest kept on moving up and down, and that strong and powerful heartbeat from her palm made Yiqing Luo's palm gradually turn hot. Yiqing Luo was extremely embarrassed. Vile man. Her skills were indeed too shallow. Every time she was in front of this man, she was the only one whose face was flushed red. On what basis did she have to be teased by him till she had no words to refute? She was obviously the real veteran. Yiqing Luo opened her mouth as she harshly bit on his shoulder. Chapter 738. The bronze mirror on the table in front coincidentally reflected Yiqing Luo's current expression. Dmo Xian glanced sideways and could see the lady's flushed cheeks and angry eyes from the bronze mirror. Extremely cute. She was so adorable that ripples appeared in his heart. In this world, only he could enjoy Yiqing Luo's cuteness alone. The warmth in Dmo Xian's peach blossom eyes became more intense. He held the woman in his arms tightly, unable to restrain himself. He lifted her chin, wanting to ask for another deep kiss, but was pushed away by the lady shyly. Yiqing Luo was like a cat as she jumped onto the bed and pulled down the veil. Tomorrow I still have to go to the Mercenary Association to take on the mission. I need to rest early. I won't send you off. Unbeknownst to him, the lady's delicate figure was faintly discernible in the white veil. This was a challenge to Dmo Xian's self-control. Dmo Xian's black eyes were like a whirlpool, lingering in the bottom of his eyes. His body gradually moved closer to the bed. Yiqing Luo's body tensed up. Either you return to the academy or the mansion. She had never experienced love affairs before, but she knew what the flame in Dmo Xian's eyes meant. Although she was a new generation woman in the 21st century, it didn't mean that she could let Dmo Xian have sex before she got married. Dmo Xian seemed as though he didn't hear anything as he walked to the bed and lifted the veil. His narrow peach blossom eyes smiled at the stiff lady on the bed. It's not the first time we share a bed. Lil Luo should be used to it. During those days in the academy, Dmo Xian would sneak into her bedroom every night and hug her to sleep. Indeed, it wasn't the first time. But, the situation now was obviously different. This was the Three Springs sect, not the academy. If Dmo Xian didn't control himself, wouldn't she be a sheep walking into the wolf's mouth? Lil Luo is afraid of me? Dmo Xian's knees were already kneeling on the bed as he leaned forward. That peerless handsome face was magnified in Yiqing Luo's eyes. Yiqing Luo's breathing suddenly stopped as her heart seemed to jump to her throat. I'm afraid of you, Before she could finish her words, in the next second, her body felt light as she and Dmo Xian both fell onto the bed. Dmo Xian's long arm hooked around her slender waist, pulling her into his embrace as one long slender leg laid across Yiqing Luo. The man's scorching temperature and those hard muscles made Yiqing Luo's body tense up. Dmo Xian's large palm covered her head, her soft hair rubbing against his palm. He chuckled and hugged her body tightly. Silly girl, go to sleep. Yiqing Luo's eyes widened. Sleep? Dmo Xian asked her to sleep. Didn't he want to? If you still don't close your eyes, I will really start to act according to the image in your mind. Dmo Xian's low and hoarse voice sounded even more magnetic. Yiqing Luo's face was as red as a tomato. She opened her mouth and fiercely bit down on Dmo Xian's shoulder, spurning this vile man, full of filth. Yiqing Luo did not bite lightly. Dmo Xian's brows didn't even crease. Stop fooling around, I have to make a trip back to the Imperial Palace tomorrow. I might not be able to accompany you for the next 3 days of holiday. A low and hoarse magnetic man's voice was filled with pampering as it lingered by the side of her ear, like a feather that tickled one's heart. Yiqing Luo was stunned as she loosened her bite and raised her head to look at him. Go to the Imperial Palace? Something happened in the Imperial Palace, I'll be back 3 days later. Dmo Xian rubbed her head. Yiqing Luo's original excited mood suddenly dissipated. She buried her head into Dmo Xian's embrace. Is it something serious? Chapter 739. Yiqing Luo responded gloomily. She couldn't hide the disappointment in her heart. Suddenly, she recalled that when she first met Dmo Xian, he had left the sublime profound heart jade in her body due to urgent matters in the Imperial Palace and left Wind to guard her side before he left in a hurry. In fact, during that period in the academy, Yiqing Luo had seen Dmo Xian receiving secret letters from the Imperial Palace several times. Every time, Dmo Xian's peerless face would be covered with a layer of haze. She had always thought that Dmo Xian would accompany her, unconditionally satisfying all her requests, unconditionally treating the brothers whom she cared about as his own people. Which made her almost forget about it. This man was not only her man. And it was the Supreme Zun. Nirvana Realm's first palace, the Imperial Palace Lord. The higher one's ability was, the greater the responsibility. It's really just a few small matters. After we meet in the academy, I'll strip naked for you to check, alright? Sensing the disappointment in the woman's tone, Dmo Xian hugged her tightly, trying to lighten the atmosphere. Yiqing Luo didn't act like usual, punching him when she heard his dirty teasing. She still buried her head in his chest, biting her pink lips. Dmo Xian sighed softly as he lifted the woman's petite body and shifted upwards, exchanging glances with her. His slender fingers caressed Yiqing Luo's pink lips, gently caressing, "If you can't bear to leave me, I won't go." The woman's fair little hand suddenly stretched out, holding the big hand on her lips. "It's not that I don't want you to go." Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes, her curly long lashes were thick, but it was unable to conceal the disappointment in her eyes. She automatically circled his neck. "I just feel that no matter what happens to me, you will accompany me and give me help. But I am unable to accompany you, to give you any help." Her ability was not enough. Far from enough. If she was a little stronger, she would have enough qualifications to stand beside Dmo Xian. No matter what happened in the Imperial Palace, she would be able to stand beside Dmo Xian, to help him solve his problems. Instead of waiting foolishly for Dmo Xian to return. In this case, it was so sweet and warm that Dmo Xian's heart almost melted. "You being by my side now is the greatest help to me." Dmo Xian couldn't help himself as he lifted Yiqing Luo's chin and kissed her all over her face. Yiqing Luo's petite body trembled as she gradually softened her body, accepting his kiss. He murmured, "But I want the people around you to truly acknowledge me." Her brother had completely acknowledged Dmo Xian's existence. But on Dmo Xian's side, even if it was on account of Dmo Xian's face, they would not show any resistance towards her. But in their hearts, they would never submit to her. Dmo Xian was too outstanding. It could be said that Dmo Xian was a myth and legend in too many people's hearts. Dmo Xian was the god they revered. There was no woman in this world who was qualified to stand beside Dmo Xian. If she wanted to be with Dmo Xian, she must possess the same level of strength as him. What she wanted, was the Imperial Palace's people, Dmo Xian's people, to genuinely acknowledge her, to be able to stand beside Dmo Xian. The woman I fancy, will definitely be peerless and unparalleled. Dmo Xian kissed between her brows, as the depth of his eyes was as deep as the abyss. His gaze turned gentler and gentler, as though his entire face was soaked in honey, so sweet that it was sickeningly sweet. This was his Lil Luo, the woman he fancied. It was because he knew Yi Qing Luo's character that until now, he still hadn't brought her to the Imperial Palace. Chapter 740. The next day, when Yi Qing Luo woke up, Dmo Xian was no longer by her side. She sighed softly, her expression becoming firm and dignified. Her now, not only was it for herself to become stronger, she was also fighting for Dmo Xian. She wanted to use the fastest speed to reach the peak. Yi Qing Luo clenched her fists as she got up from the bed and speedily washed up. Before leaving, Yi Qing Luo went to check on Zi Ling's condition. After ascertaining that there weren't any other influences, Yi Qing Luo left the courtyard and headed straight towards the huge mansion which the youngsters from the World Group had agreed on. Yi Qing Luo didn't know that not too long after she left, old Grand Madam came to Yi Qing Luo's courtyard with the support of Bai Ming clan. In Bai Mingshi's hands, there was still Yi Qing Luo's mother's name engraved on the ranking. After leaving the ancestral hall yesterday, under the comforting words of the Bai Ming clan, the great ancestor had regained his senses. Today he borrowed Yi Qing Luo's request yesterday to take that slut's tablet and send it to her courtyard. Who knew that when they arrived at the courtyard, they were informed by Hong Mei that Yi Qing Luo had left Three Springs sect early in the morning. The elder ancestor's face turned as black as charcoal on the spot, his face ashen. However, he had already taken the tablet, so there was no reason for him to return it. Lady Bai Ming gave the tablet to Hong Mei, then helped the old ancestor leave. After Yi Qing Luo stepped into the mansion, she immediately felt that she had walked into the wrong place. The exterior of the old house was still nostalgic and ancient. But, she remembered that the interior design of the old house was very simple and elegant, without losing its grandeur. Why had it become like this now? Why did it look like the old house of a nouveau riche? Who could tell her what the hell was going on? The huge garden was no longer filled with flowers, and the lush trees were also gone. Instead, there was a fake mountain made of gold and a pond with clear water flowing around it. On both sides of the pond, there were two golden lion sculptures. The lion's eyes were inlaid with luminous pearls and looked especially dazzling. Yi Qing Luo was completely dumbfounded. She was not the only one who was confused. The dozen or so youths who had arrived earlier were also dumbfounded. After they entered the old house, they began to wonder if they had come to the wrong place. But, even if they went to the wrong place, it was impossible for more than 10 people to go to the wrong place at the same time. Go. Let's go in and take a look. Yi Qing Luo frowned. This kind of decor and design was completely unlike Yan Xiaoyi's style. Moreover, it was impossible to build the fake mountain, pond, and two golden lions in a short period of time. Yan Xiaoyi, who had been staying with them in the academy for the past month, did not have the time to make such a large construction. This old residence was purchased by Yan Xiaoyi. After becoming the World Group's gathering place, it was even more impossible for Yan Xiaoyi to sell this old mansion. There was only one possibility: this old house had been forcibly taken away. Was it the Yuchi family who deliberately invaded their territory when they were in the Heavenly Academy? When they crossed the garden and arrived at the courtyard where they were training, they were even more dumbfounded. The ground of the huge courtyard had been rebuilt. It was exactly like the floor of a training ground. Around the courtyard, there were 10 weapon racks, with all kinds of weapons placed on them. In the middle of the training ground, there were a total of 20 over men dressed in the World Group uniform currently training. Seeing someone coming over, those men stopped their training and turned their heads in unison. Yiqing Luo was rather familiar with these faces. Chapter 741. 10 over youngsters also recognized them as their eyes opened wide, as though they couldn't believe that they would actually appear here. If it wasn't for the fact that they were wearing their own uniform, they would have thought that their mansion had been forcefully occupied by the Blue Dragon mercenary group. Yiqing Luo's expression was extremely indifferent, as though she had long expected that they would come over. She only used a sharp gaze to sweep past those 20 over men, as though she was confirming their numbers. The leader of the group, Xiaofan, took a step forward as he looked respectfully at Yiqing Luo. "Miss Yi, we have a total of 24 brothers and we're here to seek shelter from the World Mercenary Group. We hope that Miss Yi will take us in." His tone was neither servile nor overbearing. He didn't seem to feel that it was embarrassing to lower their heads to this young lady who was just a 15-year-old young lady. They only believed in those who had the ability. Yiqing Luo had enough qualifications to make them believe in her. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a smile as she slowly nodded, "Welcome to your addition. Congratulations on making the best choice." Xiaobo's expression was neither happy nor angry as he cupped his fists. "I hope so." Seeking shelter from the World Group was their current only choice. Of course, it was also because the mercenary group allowed them to see hope. It allowed them to see the dream of joining the mercenary group back then. The World Group's unity, their tacit understanding, and that kind of brotherhood which disregarded everything for their brothers, had infected them. Since Xiaobo had brought his brothers over, naturally he hoped that this would be the last mercenary group they would stay in, an eternal mercenary group. Yiqing Luo smiled as her gaze surveyed the surroundings of the training grounds as her brows rose. "This place is yours." "No." Xiaobo shook his head. "It was built by Thief Butler. He said that you instructed him before you left." "Thief Butler? What the hell? When did she instruct him to do these things? Her taste in beauty wasn't so deranged to such a stage." "Wait a minute. Thief?" Yiqing Luo's brows twitched as her lips twitched a few times as her eyes turned extremely vicious. Her pink lips moved, and every single cold word came out of her mouth. "Thief! Saint, come out right now." Not long after, an old man dressed in silk and brocade leisurely walked out from the inner courtyard. "Tsk tsk tsk, little girl, this old man is not deaf, there is no need to shout so loudly." After seeing God Thief's dressing clearly, Yiqing Luo almost spat out a mouthful of blood. The navy blue robe was embroidered with large gold ingots. "That's right. Just one. Two. There were also 3 jadeite stones of different colors hanging on his waist. Her messy hair was casually tied into a bun. He wore a purple gold jade crown, which was also inlaid with a few shining agate stones. This was the typical attire of a nouveau riche. Damn it. So, this was holy pirate style? Pft, pft. This was the first time the dozen or so youths behind him had seen someone dressed like this. They couldn't help but burst into laughter. Yiqing Luo's lips twitched as she resisted the urge to give God Thief a good beating. Taking a deep breath, she turned her head and looked at the 10 over youngsters behind her. "You guys stay here for your morning exercise first, I'll have a private chat with God Thief." The last 4 words were said through clenched teeth. Following that, she walked towards God Thief in big strides. Stretching out her hand, she grabbed God Thief's skinny shoulder and dragged him into the inner courtyard without any explanation. From afar, she could still hear God Thief's loud and clear voice. The 10 over youngsters who remained in the courtyard rubbed their arms. "Do you feel that? Boss's gaze is very scary." You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.